The emergency room doors exploded inward at 8:19 p.m., and the world turned red. Blood slicked across white tile as two paramedics fought to keep a man on the gurney, a man who wasn't staying down. His eyes rolled back, pupils blown wide, and he thrashed with the kind of violence that came from somewhere beyond pain, beyond fear. Combat boots kicked oxygen tanks across the floor. His hands clawed at phantom enemies only he could see. "Incoming! Get down!" His scream shattered the fluorescent-lit stillness. Then a woman stepped forward, small, white, 30-something. The kind of nurse people's eyes slid right past in hallways. She didn't raise her voice, didn't reach for restraints. She just leaned close to his ear and whispered 6 words that nobody else could hear. The thrashing stopped. Completely. Like someone had cut the power. The SEAL's wild eyes locked onto her face, and his bloodied hand shot up, not to strike, but to salute. His voice cracked. "Ma'am, is that really you?" Every doctor in that room froze. Because the man who'd fought off 6 trained professionals just surrendered to a nurse they'd never noticed before. Before we go further, stick with me until the end of this story. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this has traveled. Hit that like button. You're about to witness something nobody saw coming. Mercy General Hospital smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee at night. Emily Carter had worked there for 3 years, moving through hallways like a shadow, picking up shifts nobody wanted, staying late when everyone else went home. She was good at being invisible. After a while, you got used to people looking through you instead of at you. The ER buzzed with its usual Thursday night chaos. Drunks sleeping it off in corner beds, a kid with a broken arm crying while his mother filled out paperwork, an elderly woman clutching her chest in Bay 3. Dr. Richard Weston stood at the nurses' station, holding court with 2 residents like he was teaching a masterclass instead of just scrolling through charts on a tablet. "The problem with emergency medicine today," Weston said, loud enough for the entire floor to hear, "is that everyone thinks they can make critical decisions, nurses especially." He didn't look at Emily, but she felt the comment land anyway. Following protocol isn't the same as understanding medicine. Emily kept her eyes on the supply cart she was restocking. Gauze, tape, saline bags. The same supplies she'd counted 1,000 times. Sarah Chen, one of the newer nurses, whispered beside her, "He's talking about last week, when you caught that misdiagnosis." "I didn't catch anything," Emily said quietly. "I just asked him to double-check." "You told him the kid had appendicitis, not gastro. You were right." "He ran the tests. He made the call." Sarah shook her head. "You're too nice. He's been gunning for you ever since." The radio on Emily's hip crackled. "Mercy General, this is Rescue 7. We're 3 minutes out with a Priority 1 trauma. Male, approximately 35. Multiple penetrating wounds to the chest and abdomen, unresponsive to sedation, exhibiting extreme combative behavior, requesting security and restraint team on standby." Weston straightened immediately, his teaching moment forgotten. "Priority 1? Tell them to route to Bay 1. Get me a trauma team in there now." He pointed at Emily without looking at her. "Carter, you're on vitals and documentation only. Stay out of the way." Emily nodded. She was always staying out of the way. The ambulance bay doors burst open exactly 3 minutes later, and the noise came in first, a roar of raw anguish and fury that didn't sound entirely human. The gurney crashed through with 2 paramedics hanging onto the sides and a third trying to keep IV lines from ripping out. The man strapped to it bucked against the restraints hard enough to make the whole frame shudder. Blood soaked through the sheets. Too much blood. The kind that meant minutes mattered. "Sector 4, north side!" The patient's voice cracked with desperation. His eyes were open but seeing somewhere else entirely. Somewhere with sand and smoke. "They're in the wire! They're in the—" A restraint snapped. His arm flew up and caught one of the paramedics across the jaw, sent him stumbling backward into a crash cart. Instruments scattered across the floor like shrapnel. "Jesus Christ," Weston muttered, stepping back. "Get security up here now!" 4 security guards piled in, built like linebackers, moving with practiced efficiency. They grabbed his limbs, tried to force him down flat. The patient fought harder. Tendons stood out in his neck. Blood pressure cuff ripped clean off. Cardiac lead sparked and died. "We need him still, or he's going to bleed out," Weston barked. "Someone get me a sedative, 2 milligrams Ativan now." Emily moved to the crash cart, drawing up the medication with steady hands while chaos swirled around her. But she wasn't watching the syringe. She was watching the patient. The way his eyes tracked the ceiling tiles like they were helicopter rotors. The way his breathing hitched in patterns. 3 fast, 1 slow, like he was counting. The specific angle of his panic. She'd seen it before. "Here!" She handed Weston the syringe. He didn't take it. He was staring at the patient with the kind of frustration doctors get when bodies don't cooperate with medical school logic. "We can't even get close enough to inject him. Carter, call anesthesia. Tell them we need a rapid sequence intubation." "He doesn't need intubation," Emily said quietly. Weston's head snapped toward her. "Excuse me?" "He's not hypoxic. He's dissociating. If you put him under now, you'll lose any chance of—" "I didn't ask for your opinion." Weston's voice dropped to something cold and sharp. "I gave you an order." Emily's jaw tightened, but she reached for the phone. Then the patient screamed again, not words this time, just sound primal and shredded, and his whole body convulsed. The monitors shrieked. One of the security guards lost his grip. The patient's hand shot out and grabbed the nearest IV stand, swung it like a weapon. People scattered. "Forget the sedative," Weston shouted. "We're going to have to physically restrain him until he exhausts himself. Get more hands in here." But Emily was already moving. She set the phone down and walked straight toward the gurney, past Weston, past the guards, into the center of the storm. Someone grabbed her arm. Sarah, eyes wide with alarm, but Emily shook her off gently. "Carter, what the hell are you doing?" Weston's voice followed her. "Get back!" She ignored him. She stepped right up to the edge of the gurney, into striking range, and leaned down close. Close enough that the patient could have hit her easily. Close enough that she could see the blown pupils, the sweat-slicked skin, the barely healed scars running up his forearms. And she spoke. 6 words, barely above a whisper, lost in the noise of monitors and shouting and the fluorescent hum overhead. 6 words nobody else heard. The change was instant. The thrashing stopped like someone had flipped a switch. The patient's wild eyes focused, locked onto Emily's face with sudden, razor-sharp clarity. His bloody hand came up, not in violence, but in a perfect trembling salute. "Ma'am." His voice cracked, thick with disbelief and something that might have been relief. "Ma'am, is that really you?" The room went silent. Even the monitors seemed to quiet, as if the machines themselves were holding their breath. Emily reached out slowly, carefully, and lowered his arm back down to the gurney. Her fingers found his pulse point. Steady, despite everything. Strong, despite the blood loss. "Stand down, soldier," she said softly. "You're safe now. Mission's over." I couldn't." He blinked hard, fighting to stay present. "There were so many. I tried to—" "You did exactly what you were trained to do." Her voice stayed calm, anchoring him. "Now I need you to let me help you. Can you do that?" He nodded. "Once." Sharp. Emily straightened and turned to face the room. Every eye was on her. Weston, the residents, the security guard still poised with restraints in hand, Sarah standing by the door with her mouth open. "He's stable enough to assess now," Emily said, like nothing unusual had just happened. "Dr. Weston, if you'd like to examine the wounds." For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Weston stepped forward, slowly, like he was approaching something he didn't quite understand. He pulled back the blood-soaked sheet, and his expression shifted. Professional mask slipping just slightly. "Multiple penetrating wounds," he said, voice tight. "Consistent with— hell, these look like shrapnel patterns. Anterior chest, right upper quadrant abdomen." He probed gently near the largest wound and the patient hissed but didn't move. "No exit wounds visible. We need imaging immediately. Probable internal bleeding, possible pneumothorax." Emily had already moved to the patient's other side, cutting away the remains of his shredded shirt. She ran her fingers along his ribs, feeling for the telltale crunch of broken bone, the subtle wrong shape of displaced tissue. Her hands moved with precision that came from somewhere deeper than training. "Breathing's asymmetric," she said quietly. "Decreased sounds on the right side, likely hemothorax, not pneumo. You'll want to tap it before imaging." Weston stared at her. "How would you know the difference from palpation alone?" Emily didn't answer. She was reading the wounds like text, like a language only certain people learn to speak. The angle of entry, the scatter pattern, the depth. Not random, not accident. These aren't fresh, she said. What? The wounds aren't fresh. Look at the edges. Early granulation tissue, initial inflammatory response. These are at least 18 hours old, maybe more. He's been bleeding internally this whole time. Weston leaned closer and his face went pale. Christ. You're right. Why the hell didn't he come in sooner? The patient's eyes found Emily again. Couldn't, he rasped. Mission wasn't complete. What mission? Weston demanded. What happened to you? But the patient wasn't looking at Weston. He was looking at Emily, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or memory. Something that made Emily's hands still for just a moment before she continued working. It doesn't matter right now, she said firmly. What matters is getting him to surgery. Dr. Weston, he needs an OR in the next 20 minutes or we're going to lose him. I'm aware of that, Carter. Weston's tone had sharpened again, defensive. I don't need a nurse telling me how to manage trauma. Then manage it. Emily met his eyes steadily. No challenge, no confrontation, just fact. Because if you wait for imaging first, he'll code before you get him upstairs. You don't make that call. Someone has to. The tension stretched tight enough to snap. Weston opened his mouth to respond, but the patient interrupted with a wet cough that brought up blood. Fresh blood. Arterial bright. Damn it! Weston grabbed for the phone. This is Dr. Weston in the ER. I need an OR prepped immediately for emergency exploratory laparotomy. Priority 1 trauma, suspected intra-abdominal hemorrhage. He slammed the phone down and pointed at Emily. You stay with him until transport arrives. Vitals every 2 minutes. If anything changes, you call me immediately. Do not attempt any procedures on your own. Are we clear? Yes, doctor. Weston stormed off, barking orders at residents who scattered like startled birds. The security guards backed away slowly, unsure if they were still needed. Sarah hovered near the supply cart, watching Emily with open curiosity. Emily turned back to the patient, checking his IV lines, adjusting his oxygen flow, working with the kind of quiet competence that usually went unnoticed. But the patient noticed. He tracked her every movement with sharp, assessing eyes that had gone clear and focused. You're different, he said after a moment. His voice was stronger now, pain pushing through whatever fog he'd been lost in. Your hands, the way you move, that's not... You didn't learn that here. Emily didn't look up from the monitor she was checking. Everyone learns somewhere. Not like that. I've seen civilian medics. They hesitate. You didn't hesitate. You knew exactly... He stopped, studying her face. What did you say to me? When I couldn't... I told you to stand down. No, before that. You said something else, something that made me... He trailed off, struggling to find the words. Where did you serve? Emily's hands paused for just a fraction of a second. I didn't. Don't lie to me, ma'am. Please. There was something raw in his voice now, something beyond physical pain. I need to know if you're who I think you are. Before Emily could respond, the patient's monitor gave a sharp, stuttering beep. His blood pressure had dropped. Not crashed, but falling steady and dangerous. Emily's eyes snapped to the numbers, then down to his abdomen, where a dark stain was spreading across the sheet. Sarah, she called out, calm but urgent. Page Weston back. Tell him we're hemorrhaging. Sarah ran for the phone. The patient's breathing had gone shallow, rapid. His skin felt clammy under Emily's fingers when she checked his pulse. Hey. She leaned close again, making sure he could see her. Stay with me. Keep your eyes open. I know who you are, he whispered. His lips were starting to pale. You were in Kandahar province, 2014. You pulled 3 of us out of an ambush when our convoy got hit. You kept us alive for 6 hours until evac arrived. Emily's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes went very still. I never forgot your face, the patient continued. None of us did. We tried to find you after, to thank you, but they told us you were gone, that you died on another mission. You're confused, Emily said quietly. Blood loss can cause... I'm not confused. His hand shot out, weak but determined, and grabbed her wrist. Your name was... The doors burst open again and Weston rushed in with 2 residents and a portable ultrasound machine. Move aside, Carter. Now. Emily stepped back, but the patient's grip on her wrist tightened for just a second before releasing. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her chest constrict. Weston ran the ultrasound probe across the patient's abdomen, and his face went grim. Free fluid in all 4 quadrants. He's bleeding out. Where the hell is my OR? He turned to one of the residents. Call upstairs again. Tell them we're coming up whether they're ready or not. Get a trauma surgeon down here to meet us. They transferred the patient to a transport gurney, moving fast but controlled. Weston led the way, barking orders into his phone. Sarah grabbed one corner of the gurney. Emily reached for another, but Weston blocked her with his arm. You've done enough, Carter. Wait here. He's unstable. I need someone who follows orders. Weston's voice dropped low, meant only for her. I don't know what little performance you just put on, but this is a hospital, not a theater. You're a nurse. Act like one. He pushed past her and the gurney rolled toward the elevators. The patient tried to lift his head, tried to look back, but they were already turning the corner. Gone. Emily stood alone in the bay, surrounded by bloody sheets and scattered supplies and the ghost smell of gunpowder that wasn't really there. Her hands were shaking. She made them stop. Sarah came back slowly, hesitant. What was that? How did you do that? Do what? Make him calm down. Everyone else tried and he just fought harder. But you... It was like you said some kind of magic word. Emily started gathering the soiled linens, bundling them for disposal. I didn't say anything special. He just needed someone to listen. That's not... Sarah cut herself off, watching Emily work with that same mechanical precision. You know what? Never mind. I'm just glad he's getting help. She paused. Do you think he'll make it? I don't know. But that was a lie. Emily did know. She knew exactly what kind of damage those wounds would cause, exactly how much blood he could afford to lose, exactly how narrow his window was. She knew because she'd held men together with her bare hands while helicopters circled overhead and bullets turned sand into glass. She knew because she'd learned to read death like a second language. She just didn't say any of that out loud. The rest of the shift blurred into routine. A sprained ankle in Bay 4, a migraine in Bay 2, a teenager with alcohol poisoning who needed charcoal and IV fluids. Emily moved through it all with her usual quiet efficiency, and the other nurses gradually forgot about the strange moment with the trauma patient. That was Emily's gift, being forgettable. At 2 a.m., during a brief lull, she found herself at the computer station, pulling up the patient's chart. He'd been admitted as John Doe because he'd arrived without ID, without wallet, without anything except torn clothes and combat boots, and wounds that told stories hospitals weren't equipped to hear. His surgery had taken 4 hours. Exploratory laparotomy, splenectomy, repair of multiple bowel perforations, drainage of hemothorax. Critical, but stable. The surgeon's notes mentioned remarkable resilience and excellent physical conditioning consistent with military service. Emily stared at the screen for a long time before closing the chart. She was pulling on her jacket to leave when Weston found her in the locker room. He looked exhausted, surgical scrubs still splattered with blood, but his expression was hard. We need to talk, Carter. Emily waited. That patient, John Doe, he's been asking for you, repeatedly. The recovery nurses say he won't settle down until he sees the woman from the ER. Weston crossed his arms. What exactly is your relationship with him? I don't have one. I'd never seen him before tonight. Then why does he keep insisting he knows you? People get confused after trauma. You know that. I also know what I saw down there. Weston stepped closer, lowering his voice. You handled that situation with a level of tactical precision that no civilian nurse should possess. You assessed his wounds like you've treated combat injuries before, and you made him stand down with a single sentence. His eyes narrowed. Who are you, really? Emily met his gaze without flinching. I'm a nurse. That's all I've ever been. I don't believe you. Then don't. She shouldered her bag and moved toward the door. Is there anything else, Dr. Weston? Because my shift ended 20 minutes ago. He didn't move aside immediately. For a moment they stood there in tense silence, something unspoken hanging between them. Then Weston stepped back. Stay away from John Doe, he said quietly. Whatever your history is, it has no place in my ER. If you want to keep working here, you'll maintain appropriate professional boundaries, understand? Emily nodded once and walked out. The parking lot was nearly empty at this hour, just a few scattered cars under flickering lights. Emily's old Honda sat in its usual spot at the far edge, away from everyone else. She unlocked it, slid inside, and sat in the darkness for a long minute before starting the engine. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Third floor, room 347, please." Emily stared at the message. She should delete it, should go home, take a shower, sleep, should forget tonight ever happened. Instead, she turned the car off and walked back inside. The third floor was quieter than the ER, most patients asleep, only a few nurses working the graveyard shift. Room 347 was at the end of the hall, door slightly ajar. Emily pushed it open slowly. John Doe, she still didn't know his real name, was awake and alone, propped up in bed with IV lines running into both arms and monitors tracking every heartbeat. He looked pale and drawn, but his eyes were sharp when they locked onto her. "You came," he said. "I shouldn't have." Emily stayed near the door. "You should be resting." "I've been resting for 4 hours. I need answers more than I need rest." He shifted slightly and winced. "They told me you saved my life twice tonight. Once when I was losing my mind, once when I was losing blood." "The surgical team saved your life. I just kept you stable." "That's not what the surgeon said. He told me if you hadn't insisted on immediate surgery, I would have bled out before they got the imaging back." The patient paused. "He also said you identified internal injuries with nothing but your hands. No scans, no equipment, just touch." Emily didn't respond. "I'm going to ask you again," he said quietly. "And I'm asking you to please tell me the truth. Were you in Kandahar province in 2014? The silence stretched long enough that Emily could hear every mechanical beep, every distant footstep, every breath. "Yes," she finally said. The patient's eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, they were wet. "I knew it. I fucking knew it," his voice cracked. "You were the medic who pulled me and Ramirez and Torres out of that kill zone. You stopped my bleeding with a belt and a fucking pen. You kept Torres conscious when he wanted to give up. You carried Ramirez half a mile on your back because he couldn't walk." "You're remembering wrong." No, I'm not." He leaned forward despite the pain it clearly caused. "What I don't understand is why you're here, why you're pretending to be just a nurse, why everyone thinks you're—" The door opened wider, and a nurse Emily didn't recognize poked her head in. "Excuse me, visiting hours ended at 9. You shouldn't be in here." "I'm staff," Emily said quickly. "Just checking on the patient." The nurse frowned but nodded and disappeared. Emily turned back to find John Doe watching her with an expression that was equal parts gratitude and confusion. "What happened to you?" he asked. "After Kandahar, where did you go?" Emily's jaw tightened. "Nowhere that matters now." "The hell it doesn't. They told us you were dead. They had a memorial. We tried to find your family, and there was nothing. No records, no history, like you'd been erased." "I was." "Why?" Before Emily could answer, her radio crackled. "All available nurses to the ER. Multi-vehicle accident incoming. Mass casualty event." Emily's head snapped up. Through the window, she could see lights blazing to life across the hospital, people running. Her instincts kicked in immediately. Assess, prioritize, move. "I have to go," she said. "Wait." John Doe tried to sit up further and gasped in pain. "I don't even know your name, your real name." Emily paused at the door, one hand on the frame. For a long moment, she didn't turn around. "It's Emily," she said finally. "Emily Carter. And you need to forget you ever knew me before." "I can't do that." "Then keep it to yourself. For both our sakes." She left before he could respond, moving quickly down the hallway toward the chaos that was beginning to erupt below. The ER would be flooded soon. There would be blood and screaming and impossible decisions, the kind of night where Emily could disappear into the work, into the mechanical rhythm of saving lives, into the forgetting. But as she hit the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, she could still feel John Doe's eyes on her, could still hear his words. "They told us you were dead." She had been. For 8 years, Emily Carter had been dead and buried and mourned. The woman who'd saved those soldiers in Kandahar province had ceased to exist the moment her convoy was ambushed on a dusty road 3 months later, the moment she'd watched her partner die. The moment she'd made a choice that cost her everything. And now, somehow, the past had walked through her ER doors, bleeding and screaming and refusing to let her stay invisible. Emily burst back into the ER just as the first ambulance arrived, and the night swallowed her whole once more. But in room 347, 3 floors above, a man who should have been resting reached for his phone instead and began making calls he probably shouldn't make. Because some debts don't expire. Some truths refuse to stay buried. And Emily Carter, whoever she really was about to find that out. The first ambulance doors opened and chaos poured out like a flood. A teenager with glass embedded in her face, screaming. An elderly man unconscious, skull cracked open, blood pooling in his white hair. A woman clutching her pregnant belly, eyes wild with terror. Emily's hands moved before her brain caught up, triaging in seconds. Red tag, yellow tag, green tag, sending bodies in different directions while her voice stayed calm and her pulse stayed steady. Bay 1, Bay 3, Bay 5, she called out. Sarah, get me 2 units O-neg for the head trauma. Martinez, start a line on the pregnant woman, large bore, and page OB immediately. Dr. Weston materialized beside her, already snapping on gloves. What have we got? 5 critical, 3 stable, 2 walking wounded. There's another ambulance 2 minutes out. Emily moved to the teenager, assessing the glass shards with quick, light touches. This one needs facial surgery consult, deep lacerations but no arterial involvement. You sure about that? Emily met his eyes. Yes. For once, Weston didn't argue. He turned to the residents hovering nearby. You heard her. Get plastics down here. Then he was gone, moving to the head trauma, shouting for CT and neurosurgery. The next 3 hours blurred into a continuous stream of blood and adrenaline. Emily worked without stopping, without thinking, letting muscle memory take over. This was the part she was good at, the controlled chaos, the split-second decisions, the way emergency stripped everything down to its most essential elements. Live or die. Save or lose. No room for anything else. But her mind kept drifting back to room 347, to the man who shouldn't have recognized her, to the calls he was probably making right now. At 5 a.m., the last patient was stabilized and sent upstairs. The ER finally went quiet, that strange post-battle stillness where everyone moved slower, spoke softer, started feeling the exhaustion they'd been running on borrowed time to avoid. Emily stood at the nurse's station finishing documentation when she felt someone watching her. Dr. Monica Reeves, the ER director, stood by the supply room. 60 years old, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who'd spent 40 years in emergency medicine and forgot more than most doctors would ever learn. She crooked a finger at Emily. My office. Now. Emily's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. She followed Reeves down the hallway, past the staff lounge, into a small office that smelled like coffee and old paperwork. Reeves closed the door and didn't sit down. Neither did Emily. I got an interesting phone call 20 minutes ago, Reeves said, from a Colonel Marcus Hayes, Army. He wanted to know if we had an Emily Carter working here. Emily's face stayed blank, but her hands went cold. I told him we did. Then he asked if I knew what she'd done before she came to Mercy General. I said I didn't, because your resume shows nursing school at State, 3 years at a clinic in Denver, and nothing before that. Reeves crossed her arms. He laughed, actually laughed. Then he said, she was the best combat medic we ever had, and we thought she was dead. The silence stretched tight. So I'm going to ask you once, and I want the truth, Reeves continued. Who the hell are you? Emily's throat felt dry. I'm a nurse. Everything on my resume is accurate. Accurate doesn't mean complete. Reeves moved closer. I watched you tonight, Carter. I've been watching you for 3 years. You're too precise, too calm. You read trauma like you've lived it, not studied it. And that stunt you pulled with John Doe, getting him to stand down when 6 people couldn't, that wasn't nursing. That was something else. I did my job. No. You did someone else's job. Someone with combat experience and tactical training and the kind of stone-cold composure that comes from seeing real horror. Reeves paused. Colonel Hayes said they've been looking for you for 8 years. Said there are people who'd like to thank you, people who'd like to know why you disappeared. Emily's jaw clenched. What did you tell him? I told him to come see for himself. He'll be here in 6 hours. The words hit like a physical blow. Emily took a step back, her mind already calculating, pack a bag, empty the apartment, get to the bus station before dawn. She'd done it before. She could do it again. Don't run, Reeves said quietly. Whatever you're hiding from, running hasn't worked. It's caught up to you. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Because right now, I have a decorated military officer telling me one of my nurses is a war hero, and I have that same nurse looking at me like I just signed her death warrant. Reeves softened slightly. What happened to you, Emily? Emily turned toward the door. I need to go. If you walk out of here, I can't protect you. I don't need protection. I need to be left alone. She pushed through the door before Reeves could respond, moving fast down the corridor. Her shift had ended an hour ago, but she'd stayed for the mass casualty event. Now she regretted it. She should have left when John Doe first recognized her, should have disappeared into the night like she always did. The locker room was empty. Emily grabbed her bag, didn't bother changing out of her scrubs. She was halfway to the exit when Sarah caught up to her, slightly out of breath. Wait. Where are you going? Home. Reeves is looking for you. She seemed... I know. I already talked to her. Sarah grabbed her arm. What's going on? Everyone's whispering about that patient from last night, about how he keeps asking for you, about how Dr. Weston is furious because it's nothing. Just let it go. This doesn't feel like nothing. Sarah's voice dropped. Are you in trouble? Emily pulled free gently. I'm fine. I just need some space. She made it to the parking lot before her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb the green button. This is Emily. Emily Carter? A man's voice, deep and formal. This is Colonel Marcus Hayes, U.S. Army. I believe you know why I'm calling. Emily stopped walking. I don't. Don't insult me. A patient in your ER recognized you from Kandahar province, specifically from an operation in 2014 where you saved his life and the lives of 2 other men under impossible conditions. That patient is named David Mitchell, Sergeant, first class retired. He's been trying to find you for 8 years. I think there's been a mistake. No mistake. I've seen your service records. The ones that still exist, anyway. Combat Medic Emily Carter, attached to the 75th Ranger Regiment as embedded civilian medical support. 2 tours. 17 confirmed saves under fire. Silver Star recommendation that never got processed because you were declared KYA 3 months before it could be approved. Emily's hand tightened on the phone. If I was declared dead, then whoever you're looking for doesn't exist anymore. That's the interesting part. You were declared dead, but there was never a body. Never any closure. Just a report that said you were killed in an ambush outside Kabul, and after that, nothing. Like you'd been erased. Hayes paused. Who did that to you, Emily? Who made you disappear? I did. I don't believe that. Believe what you want. I'm not going back. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to meet me. Just once, so I can close a file that's been sitting on my desk for almost a decade. So I can tell David Mitchell and the others that you're alive and safe. That's all. Emily's chest felt tight. The others? There are 9 men and women who owe you their lives. Some of them have been carrying guilt for years, thinking they got out and you didn't. They deserve to know the truth. The truth is I'm nobody. I'm just a nurse in a hospital that doesn't want complications. Then uncomplicate things. Meet me. 1 hour. There's a diner 2 blocks from Mercy General, Lucy's place. I'll be there at 7. Hayes' voice gentled slightly. Please, Emily, this isn't about dragging you back into something you left. This is about giving people closure, including you. The line went dead. Emily stood in the parking lot as the sun started creeping over the horizon, painting everything gold and pink. Beautiful. Wrong. She should get in her car and drive until the tank ran empty, find a new city, a new name, a new life. That was the plan. That had always been the plan. But something in Hayes' voice had hooked into her chest and wouldn't let go. They deserved to know the truth. She checked her watch. 6:15 a.m., 45 minutes. Emily got in her car and started driving, but not toward the highway. Toward downtown. Toward Lucy's place. The diner was one of those ancient establishments that looked like it had been there since the city was founded. Cracked red vinyl booths, checkered floors, a jukebox in the corner that probably didn't work. Emily pushed through the door at exactly 7 o'clock and spotted him immediately. Colonel Marcus Hayes sat in a corner booth, wearing civilian clothes but carrying himself like military. 50-something, graying at the temples, ramrod posture even while drinking coffee. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition, maybe, or relief. "Emily Carter." He stood, offered his hand. "Thank you for coming." Emily didn't shake. She slid into the booth across from him. "You have 15 minutes. Hayes sat back down, studied her for a moment. "You look different than your service photos. Older, obviously, but that's not it. You look tired. 8 years of running will do that. Why were you running? You said you had questions. Ask them." Hayes pulled a slim folder from the bag beside him and set it on the table. "This is everything I could find about what happened to you. It's not much. You were attached to a ranger unit providing medical support in eastern Afghanistan. Your record was exemplary. Then on September 19th, 2016, your convoy was ambushed on a supply run outside Kabul. 4 casualties. You and Staff Sergeant Owen Hughes were the only survivors, but you both disappeared. 2 weeks later, Hughes's body was found in a ravine 15 miles from the ambush site. You were never found." "Chris, what's it?" He flipped open the folder. "The official report says you were killed in the initial attack and your body was never recovered. But there are inconsistencies." "Like what?" "Like the fact that Hughes was found with a bullet in his back at close range. Like the fact that eyewitness reports from local villagers mentioned seeing a Western woman moving through the mountains days after the ambush. Like the fact that someone accessed a secure military database 6 months later using your credentials and deleted large portions of your service record." Emily's expression stayed neutral, but her pulse kicked up. "Sounds like you've been thorough. I'm trying to understand what happened, and more importantly, why you've been hiding ever since." "Maybe I wasn't hiding. Maybe I just wanted out." "Then why not go through proper channels? Why disappear completely? Why let everyone think you were dead?" Hayes leaned forward. "What are you afraid of, Emily?" Before she could answer, the diner door opened and 2 men walked in. Military. Emily recognized the walk, the bearing, the way their eyes swept the room before fixing on her. Both were around 40. Both wore jeans and jackets that didn't quite hide the bulk of their frames. Hayes turned, saw them, and his jaw tightened. "I didn't call them." "Who are they?" "John Martinez and Kevin Torres. You saved their lives in Kandahar province. They were with David Mitchell in that convoy when you pulled them out." The 2 men approached slowly, like they were afraid sudden movement would spook her. Martinez had a scar running down his left cheek that hadn't been there in 2014. Torres walked with a slight limp. Both looked at Emily like they were seeing a ghost. "Ma'am." Martinez's voice cracked slightly. "It's really you." Emily's hands curled into fists under the table. "You shouldn't be here." "Mitchell called us last night, said you were alive, that you'd saved him again, that you were working as a nurse under your real name." Torres pulled out a chair from a nearby table, sat down carefully. "We had to see for ourselves." "Well, you've seen. Now leave." "We can't do that." Martinez sat down too, uninvited. "We spent 8 years thinking you were dead, wondering what happened, wondering if we could have—" "You couldn't have done anything." Emily's voice came out harder than she intended. "What happened was my choice. Mine. And it has nothing to do with you. The hell it doesn't." Torres leaned forward. "You died saving us, or that's what they told us. We've been living with that, and now we find out you've been alive this whole time, hiding, pretending to be someone else. We deserve to know why." "You don't deserve anything from me." The words landed like a slap. Martinez flinched. Torres's expression went cold. Hayes cleared his throat. "Emily, these men aren't your enemy. They're trying to help." "I don't need help. I need to be forgotten." "Too late for that," a new voice said from behind her. Emily turned and her blood went ice cold. Dr. Richard Weston stood 3 feet away, holding a coffee cup, wearing civilian clothes but looking every bit as hostile as he did in the hospital. Behind him, slightly off to the side, was another man Emily didn't recognize. Tall, thin, wire-frame glasses, expensive suit. He had the look of someone who spent more time in boardrooms than hospitals. "What the hell is this?" Hayes demanded, standing up. "Who are you?" "Dr. Richard Weston, head of emergency medicine at Mercy General Hospital." And this, Weston gestured to the man in the suit, is Douglas Freeman, legal counsel for Mercy General's parent corporation. He looked at Emily with something that might have been triumph. We need to talk about your employment status, Ms. Carter. Or should I say, whoever you really are. Emily felt trapped. Military on one side, hospital administration on the other, and nowhere to run. This is a private conversation. Not anymore. Freeman pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited. When an employee lies on their resume, commits fraud during the hiring process, and potentially endangers patients by practicing medicine under false credentials, it becomes a legal matter. I haven't lied about anything. Really? Because, according to Colonel Hayes here, Freeman gestured at Hayes, you have military medical experience that isn't listed anywhere on your nursing resume. You claim to have worked at a clinic in Denver from 2016 to 2019, but I made some calls this morning. That clinic has no record of you. Neither does the nursing school you claim to graduate from. Emily's stomach dropped. You had no right. I had every right. You're working in my hospital, treating patients, making medical decisions. If your credentials are fabricated, you're practicing without a license. That's a felony. Freeman opened a briefcase and pulled out several documents. I'm here to offer you a choice. You can resign immediately, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and walk away. Or we can involve the police and the state medical board, and you can defend yourself in court. Hayes slammed his hand on the table. This is harassment. Emily Carter is a decorated combat veteran with more medical training than half your staff. She's a fraud, Weston interrupted. I've been suspicious of her for months. Too competent, too knowledgeable, too convenient. And last night proved it. She handled that patient like she had combat experience, and now we know why. Because she does. Because she's been lying about who she is since the day she walked through our doors. I never lied, Emily said quietly. Everything I told you was true. Except the parts you left out. Except the military service you erased. Except the person you used to be. Weston leaned closer. Who are you running from, Carter? What did you do that was so bad you had to disappear? Emily stood up abruptly, the booth seat scraping against the floor. I'm done here. Freeman stood too. If you leave without signing these papers, I'll have the police waiting for you at your apartment within the hour. Let them wait. Emily pushed past Weston toward the door, but Martinez and Torres moved to block her path. Not aggressive, just present. Human barriers. Please, Martinez said, don't run again. Whatever happened, whatever you're hiding from, we can help. You can't. Then at least tell us the truth. We've earned that much. Emily looked at him, really looked, and saw the scar on his face, the haunted look in his eyes, the weight he'd been carrying. She saw the same thing in Torres, in Hayes, even in David Mitchell lying in a hospital bed 3 blocks away. They'd all been carrying pieces of her for 8 years, and she'd let them. The truth is that Owen Hughes died because of me, she said. Her voice came out flat, emotionless. The truth is that I made a choice in that ambush, and it got him killed. The truth is that I've been running ever since because I couldn't face what I'd done. The diner went silent. Even the cook in the back seemed to stop moving. What choice? Hayes asked carefully. Emily's hands were shaking now, slight tremors she couldn't control. We were pinned down. 4 dead, 2 of us left, no extraction coming. Owen was hit in the leg, bleeding out. I could have stayed with him, tried to stop it, but there were wounded in one of the other vehicles. Men who'd die if I didn't get to them fast. So I made him a tourniquet, told him to hold on, and I went. You did your job, Torres said. I left him alone. When I came back 20 minutes later, he was gone. Just gone. I found him 2 days later in that ravine, shot in the back at close range. Someone had executed him while I was saving other people. That wasn't your fault. It was my call, my choice, and he died because of it. Emily's voice cracked. So I ran. I erased everything, built a new life, tried to forget. But you can't forget something like that. You carry it. Every patient, every shift, every life you save, you're just trying to balance the scales for the one you lost. Martinez stepped closer, his expression softening. Ma'am, with all due respect, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Emily blinked. What? You saved lives that day, multiple lives, including mine and Torres's convoy 3 months earlier. Owen Hughes knew the risk, we all did. Blaming yourself for making the right tactical decision is just arrogance disguised as guilt. You don't understand. I understand that you've been punishing yourself for 8 years for doing exactly what you were trained to do. I understand that you've been hiding from people who wanted to thank you because you couldn't forgive yourself. And I understand that Owen Hughes would be pissed as hell to know you threw away your life over his death. Torres nodded. He was a good man. He wouldn't have wanted this for you. Emily felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been sealed tight for years. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She wouldn't let herself. It doesn't matter what he would have wanted. He's dead and I'm here, and that's not changing. But you can stop running, Hayes said. You can stop hiding. Your service record can be restored. Your credentials can be legitimized. You can have your life back. I don't want it back. Then what do you want? Before Emily could answer, her phone rang. She pulled it out. Mercy General's number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb the button. This is Emily. Carter, it's Dr. Reeves. You need to get to the hospital immediately. I can't. David Mitchell is crashing. Something's wrong with his surgical repair. He's asking for you specifically, and he won't let anyone else near him. Reeves's voice was tight with urgency. He's combative again, tearing out lines, and his blood pressure is dropping. If you don't get here in the next 10 minutes, he's going to die. Emily's mind went blank, then snapped into focus with crystalline clarity. I'm on my way. She shoved the phone in her pocket and pushed past Martinez toward the door. Hayes called after her, but she didn't stop. She ran to her car, engine starting before she'd fully closed the door, tires squealing as she pulled out of the parking lot. The hospital was 4 minutes away. She made it in 2. The ER was in chaos when she burst through the doors. Alarms screaming, people shouting, the sound of something crashing in Bay 1. Emily ran toward it, still in yesterday's scrubs, hair wild, breathing hard. David Mitchell was sitting up in bed. Sitting up despite the fresh surgical incisions, despite the tubes and wires, his face contorted with pain and something deeper. Fear, real, visceral. The walls are closing in fear. 2 nurses struggled to hold him down while Dr. Weston tried to approach with a syringe. Don't touch me, Mitchell's voice was raw. Get away, get her, I need... Then he saw Emily in the doorway, and his whole body sagged with relief. Ma'am, thank God. Tell them I'm not crazy. Tell them something's wrong. Emily moved to his bedside immediately, ignoring Weston's protest. She put her hand on Mitchell's shoulder, firm, grounding, and his breathing started to slow. Talk to me, she said calmly. What do you feel? It's wrong. Inside. Something's wrong. They think I'm having a panic attack, but it's not. There's pressure and it's moving, and he gasped. It hurts different than surgery, deeper. Emily's eyes went to the monitors, then to his surgical dressings, then to his face. She pressed gently on his abdomen, watching his reaction. When she reached the right upper quadrant, he flinched hard. How long has this been building? 20 minutes? Maybe 30? It started small, but now... Did you tell anyone? They said it was normal post-op pain. They gave me morphine, but it didn't help. Then I got scared, and I couldn't think straight, and I just needed someone who'd listen. Emily turned to Weston, who stood frozen by the crash cart. He has a post-operative bleed, probably missed something during surgery. His abdomen's rigid and he's splinting his breathing. That's impossible. The surgery was textbook. Then run the test and prove me wrong. But if you wait another 10 minutes, he'll be in shock. Weston's jaw clenched, but he grabbed the portable ultrasound machine. The moment he placed the probe on Mitchell's abdomen, his expression changed. Jesus, there's free fluid, a lot of it. Get him back to the OR now, Emily said, and call the surgeon who did his first procedure. He's going to need to repair whatever he missed. The room exploded into motion, nurses disconnecting monitors, anesthesia being paged, the gurney being wheeled toward the elevators. Mitchell grabbed Emily's hand as they moved. Come with me, he said. Please, I need you there. I'm not cleared for surgery. I don't care. I need you. Emily looked at Reeves, who'd appeared in the doorway. The older woman's face was unreadable, but she nodded once. Go, I'll handle the paperwork. They rolled Mitchell into the elevator, Emily still holding his hand. Weston got in too, along with 2 nurses and a resident. The doors closed, and for a moment, nobody spoke. How did you know? Weston finally asked. The ultrasound was negative this morning. I listened to him. He's the expert on his own body. That's not medicine, that's guesswork. No, that's respecting your patient enough to believe them when they say something's wrong. The elevator opened onto the surgical floor and they wheeled Mitchell toward OR3, where the surgical team was already prepping. At the doors, Emily started to let go of his hand, but Mitchell held on tighter. Will you be here when I wake up? I don't know if they'll let me stay. Then I guess they'll have to. He tried to smile but winced instead. You saved my life 3 times now, ma'am. I'm starting to think you're stuck with me. They took him through the doors and Emily stood alone in the hallway, hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline crash. She was about to turn back toward the elevator when she heard footsteps behind her. Colonel Hayes, Martinez, and Torres stood at the end of the corridor, having apparently followed her from the diner. Behind them, looking significantly less pleased, were Weston and Freeman. Well, Hayes said quietly, that was educational. Emily didn't respond. She was too tired to run, too wired to sit, too overwhelmed to process anything except the fact that David Mitchell was in surgery again and might not make it out this time. Freeman stepped forward, his expression cold. Ms. Carter, we still need to resolve your employment situation. Regardless of your heroics just now, you're still practicing under fraudulent credentials. Those credentials aren't fraudulent, Hayes interrupted. They're classified. There's a difference. Not in the eyes of the law. Then change the law, because I'm not letting you destroy this woman's life over bureaucratic technicalities. This isn't your call to make, Colonel. Actually, a new voice said from behind them, it is. Everyone turned. A woman in a Navy uniform walked down the corridor, commander's insignia, carrying herself with the kind of authority that made even Freeman straighten up. She was in her 50s, dark-skinned, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. I'm Commander Patricia Osei, Office of Naval Intelligence. Emily Carter's service record is classified under my authority, and anyone who attempts to access or disseminate that information without clearance will be prosecuted under federal law. She looked directly at Freeman. That includes you, counselor, so I suggest you back off before this becomes an interagency incident. Freeman opened his mouth, closed it, then turned to Weston. We need to discuss this with the hospital board. You do that, Osei said pleasantly. In the meantime, Ms. Carter's credentials will be verified through proper channels, and you'll find that everything is in order. She's a registered nurse with extensive trauma experience, and her qualifications exceed your hospital's standards by a considerable margin. Freeman left without another word, Weston following reluctantly. When they were gone, Osei turned to Emily. We need to talk, privately. Emily's stomach sank. Who sent you? The same people who've been looking for you for 8 years. The same people who want answers about what happened to Owen Hughes. And the same people who are very interested in why you've been hiding. Osei's expression softened slightly. But that conversation can wait until your patient is out of surgery. Right now, I'm here to make sure no one interferes with your work. Why? Because you've saved enough lives to earn a little protection. Consider it a down payment on the debt we owe you. Emily wanted to argue, to push back, to maintain the walls she'd spent years building. But she was so tired. Tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of carrying 8 years of guilt like stones in her pockets. Fine, she said. But after Mitchell's stable, I'm done. No more questions, no more digging into my past. I want to go back to being nobody. Osei smiled faintly. I don't think that's an option anymore. Not after today. The surgery took 3 hours. Emily waited in the family lounge, Hayes and the others keeping silent vigil with her. Commander Osei made phone calls in the corner, her voice low and clipped. When the surgeon finally emerged, looking exhausted but satisfied, Emily stood up before he could speak. He's stable, the surgeon confirmed. We found a bleeder we'd missed, small arterial branch, hidden behind scar tissue. Another hour and he would have exsanguinated. I don't know how you knew, but you saved his life, again. Emily nodded, relief flooding through her. Can I see him? He's in recovery. Give him another hour. She sat back down, and for the first time in 8 years, Emily Carter allowed herself to feel something other than guilt. It wasn't happiness, not quite, but it was close. It was the feeling of maybe, possibly, being able to stop running. Then Osei's phone rang. She answered, listened for a long moment, and her expression went carefully neutral. When she hung up, she looked at Emily with something that might have been sympathy. We have a problem, Osei said quietly. Owen Hughes's body was exhumed last week as part of a routine review. The forensics came back this morning. She paused. The bullet that killed him wasn't enemy fire. It was American, fired from close range by someone who had access to his location. Emily felt the floor tilt beneath her. What are you saying? I'm saying Owen Hughes was murdered by someone in his own unit, and whoever did it has been covering it up for 8 years. Osei leaned forward. Emily, I need you to tell me everything that happened in that ambush, because someone very powerful doesn't want the truth to come out, and they're going to come for you the moment they realize you're still alive. The waiting room went silent. Hayes's face had gone pale. Martinez and Torres exchanged looks that said they'd already suspected something was wrong. And Emily Carter, who'd spent 8 years running from guilt that was never hers to carry, realized she'd been running from the wrong thing all along. Emily's hands had gone numb. She stared at Commander Osei, trying to process words that didn't make sense, that couldn't be true. You're saying someone in our unit killed Owen. I'm saying the evidence points that direction. The bullet was 5.56 NATO, standard issue. The angle of entry suggests he was on his knees when he was shot. And the location where his body was found, 15 miles from the ambush site, means someone moved him there deliberately. Osei pulled out a tablet, swiped to a photo that made Emily's stomach turn. Forensic images. Skeletal remains. Measurements and angles drawn in digital overlay. This wasn't enemy action. This was execution. Hayes had gone rigid in his chair. Who else knows about this? As of 2 hours ago? Just the forensics team, me, and the officer who ordered the exhumation. By tomorrow morning, it'll be flagged in the system, and a lot of people are going to start asking questions. Osei looked at Emily. You were the last person to see Owen alive. Whatever you remember from that day, I need it now. Before whoever did this realizes you're a loose end. Emily's mind spun back 8 years, dragging up memories she'd buried so deep they felt like someone else's life. The convoy. The explosion. The screaming. Owen's leg torn open, bone visible through shredded muscle. Her hands slick with his blood while she tied the tourniquet, while she made the choice that had defined everything since. I told you what happened. I left him to help the others. I need details. Who else survived the initial blast? No one. 4 KIA instantly. The driver, 2 Rangers in the lead vehicle, 1 civilian contractor. Owen and I were in the trail vehicle. We were far enough back that the IED only caught the front end. So just you and Owen made it out. Initially, yes, but they were wounded from a separate convoy 2 clicks east. We'd been responding to their distress call when we got hit. Osei leaned forward. Who knew you were responding to that call? Command. Our unit. Anyone monitoring the radio frequency. Emily's throat felt tight. We weren't exactly being subtle, which means someone could have set up the ambush knowing exactly where you'd be. Osei swiped to another image, a map with routes marked in red. The IED was placed on the only road that led to the other convoy's position. Someone wanted to make sure you didn't reach them. Martinez stood up abruptly. That doesn't make sense. Why target a medical team? Because someone didn't want Emily reaching those wounded soldiers alive. Osei looked at Emily. Who was in that other convoy? Emily closed her eyes, pulling names from the fog. A logistics team. 5 vehicles, maybe 15 personnel. They'd hit a secondary device 3 hours earlier called for medical support. Owen and I were the closest qualified response. Do you remember any names from that team? No. We never made it to them. By the time I stabilized Owen and checked the wreckage, the other convoy had already been extracted by air. Convenient. Osei made notes on her tablet. So you're stuck in hostile territory with a wounded soldier, no transportation, no backup. What did you do? I told Owen to stay put, that I'd be back in 20 minutes. There were supplies in the wreckage I could salvage, medical gear, water, ammunition. I made him as stable as I could, and I went scavenging. And when you came back, Emily's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. He was gone. Just gone. No blood trail, no signs of struggle, like he'd walked away on a shattered leg. Or someone carried him. The words hit like a fist. Emily had spent 8 years convincing herself that Owen had panicked, had tried to crawl to safety, had gotten disoriented and wandered off. The alternative, that someone had taken him while she was 20 meters away, was too horrific to consider. I searched for 2 days, Emily continued. No food, no sleep, just looking. I found his body in a ravine on the third day. Single gunshot wound to the back of the head. I assumed insurgents had found him, that I'd failed to hide him well enough. But you didn't report it. I couldn't. By that point, I was barely conscious, dehydrated, hypothermic. I made it to a village and collapsed. When I woke up 3 days later in a field hospital, they told me my unit had been declared KYA, and my records were being sealed for operational security. Emily met Osei's eyes. They told me to disappear. So I did. Who told you that? A major I'd never seen before. He said there were complications with the mission, that my survival would raise questions they couldn't answer, that the safest thing was to let me stay dead. Emily's hands clenched. I was 26 years old, scared out of my mind, and convinced I'd gotten Owen killed through my own incompetence. So when he offered me a way out, I took it. Osei exchanged a glance with Hayes. Do you remember this major's name? Garrick. Major Thomas Garrick. The room went very quiet. Hayes's face had drained of color. Martinez muttered something under his breath that sounded like a curse. What? Emily demanded. Who is he? Major Garrick was promoted to lieutenant colonel 6 years ago, Hayes said carefully. He's currently stationed at the Pentagon. He oversees classified operations and has significant pull in intelligence circles. He's also been blocking every attempt to review your case file, Osei added. Every request I've submitted has been denied with his signature. I thought it was standard operational security, but now... She trailed off, implications hanging heavy in the air. Torres spoke up for the first time since the surgery. You think Garrick was the one who killed Owen? I think Garrick had something to do with it, yes. Whether he pulled the trigger himself or covered for whoever did, he's dirty. Osei looked at Emily. And if he finds out you're alive and talking, you become a threat he can't ignore. Emily stood up, needing to move, needing air. She walked to the window overlooking the parking lot, watching early morning traffic build. Behind her, she could hear the others talking in low voices, making plans, discussing security protocols and witness protection, and words that felt disconnected from reality. 8 years. She'd spent 8 years running from guilt that should have been aimed at someone else. Owen hadn't died because she'd left him. He'd died because someone had wanted him dead, had used the ambush as cover, had shot him execution style, and dumped his body where it would look like enemy action. And whoever that someone was, they'd spent the last 8 years believing Emily Carter was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere in the Afghan desert. Emily. Hayes appeared beside her, keeping his voice low. We need to get you somewhere safe. If Osei's right about Garrick, he'll move fast once he knows you're alive. He already knows. David Mitchell recognized me in the ER. By now, that story's spread to every soldier who served in that region. It's only a matter of time before it reaches someone who reports back to Garrick. Then we have hours, maybe less. Hayes pulled out his phone. I can arrange protective custody, get you off grid until we sort this out. No. Emily, I said no. I'm done running. She turned to face him, and something in her expression made him step back. Owen died because I wasn't there. Because I made a tactical decision that left him vulnerable. I'm not making that mistake again. This isn't the same situation, isn't it? David Mitchell is 3 floors above us, barely out of surgery, completely defenseless. If Garrick wants to tie up loose ends, Mitchell's the obvious next target, the man who recognized me, who knows my face, who can connect dots. Emily's jaw set. I'm not leaving him. You can't protect him alone. Then help me. But I'm not running. Hayes studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but we do this smart. Osei, can you get security on Mitchell's room? Hospital security won't cut it against someone like Garrick. He'll have access to personnel who can walk through civilian defenses like they're not there. Osei pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. But I can get a protective detail from Naval Intelligence. Give me 30 minutes. We might not have 30 minutes. Then you better hope I'm fast. Martinez and Torres moved to flank Emily. We're staying too, Martinez said. It wasn't a question. You don't owe me anything. With all due respect, ma'am, that's not your call to make. You saved our lives. Now we return the favor. Before Emily could argue, her radio crackled. Code Blue, ICU room 347. Code Blue, ICU 347. Emily's blood turned to ice. Room 347. David Mitchell, She was moving before conscious thought caught up, running for the stairs because the elevator would be too slow. Hayes and the others followed, footsteps thundering in the stairwell. Emily took the steps 3 at a time, lungs burning, that old combat instinct roaring to life. Move faster, think later, get there before it's too late. She burst through the third-floor doors and sprinted down the corridor. A crowd had gathered outside 347, nurses, residents, a crash cart blocking the doorway. Emily shoved through them without apology, ignoring protests, her eyes locking on the bed. David Mitchell was seizing. Full grand mal, his body arcing off the mattress, monitors screaming their alarm symphony. A resident struggled to maintain his airway while 2 nurses tried to get IV access for medication. But it was the syringe on the floor that made Emily's heart stop, empty, cap off, recently used. "What did you give him?" Emily demanded. The resident looked up, confused. "Nothing. He was stable 5 minutes ago. Then he just started. Someone gave him something. Look at the IV port." One of the nurses checked, and her face went pale. "There's a new injection site. Fresh." Emily grabbed the empty syringe from the floor with the edge of her scrub top, careful not to touch it directly. Clear liquid residue in the barrel. No label. "Who was in here in the last 10 minutes?" "Just Dr. Weston. He came to check on the patient." "Where is he now?" "I don't know. He left right before the code was called." Emily's mind raced through possibilities, through medications that could cause seizures, through poisons that worked fast and mimicked medical emergencies. "We need to intubate him now and get toxicology. Someone deliberately—" The seizure stopped abruptly. Mitchell's body went slack, eyes rolling back. The monitor flatlined with a long, continuous tone that cut through Emily's words like a blade. "He's in V-fib," the resident shouted. "Charging to 200. Wait." Emily moved to the bedside, checking pupil response, carotid pulse, the color of his skin. Something was wrong. The rhythm on the monitor didn't match the physical presentation. "Pull the leads." "What?" "Pull the leads off his chest. Now." The nurse hesitated, then ripped off the electrode patches. The monitor continued its flatline alarm, but Mitchell's chest was moving. Shallow breaths, barely visible, but present. "The monitor's been tampered with," Emily said. "Someone swapped the lead connections to make it look like he's coding. He's not. He's been sedated." She leaned close to Mitchell's face, checking his breathing pattern, the subtle twitch of his eyelids. Probably a paralytic agent mixed with a heavy sedative, meant to look like a complication from surgery. Hayes had appeared in the doorway, Torres and Martinez right behind him. "Are you saying someone tried to kill him?" "I'm saying someone succeeded in making it look like he died, but failed to actually kill him. The dosage was off." Emily turned to the nurses. "Get me flumazenil and start a naloxone drip. And someone call the pharmacy. I need to know what medications Dr. Weston accessed in the last hour." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Emily stayed at Mitchell's bedside, monitoring his vitals, watching for any sign that the paralytic was wearing off. Hayes pulled out his phone, speaking in terse, clipped sentences to someone on the other end. Martinez moved to guard the door while Torres swept the room, looking for anything else that might have been tampered with. It took 4 minutes for the reversal agents to kick in. Mitchell's breathing deepened, became more regular. His fingers twitched. His eyes began to move beneath closed lids. Emily kept talking to him in a low, steady voice, anchoring him back to consciousness. "Come on, Mitchell. You've survived worse than this. You're not checking out on me now." His eyes cracked open, unfocused at first, then sharpening as awareness returned. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry, his tongue thick from the medication. Emily held a cup of water to his lips, let him take tiny sips. "Weston," he finally rasped. "He said he needed to adjust my pain meds. Then everything went dark." "How long was he in here?" 2 minutes, maybe less." Mitchell's hand shot out, grabbed Emily's wrist with surprising strength. "He asked about you, about Kandahar, about who else knew you were alive." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I didn't trust the way he was asking." Mitchell's eyes were clearer now, sharper. He wasn't acting like a doctor. He was acting like someone gathering intel. Hayes stepped closer. "Did he say where he was going?" "No. But he got a phone call right before he injected me. He stepped into the hallway, and I heard him say a name, Garrick." The word landed like a bomb. Emily felt the floor shift beneath her, felt 8 years of careful distance collapse into immediate, visceral danger. Weston wasn't just an arrogant doctor. He was connected to Garrick, had been from the beginning. "How long has Weston worked at Mercy, General?" Emily asked the nearest nurse. 3 years. He started about 6 months after you did." 6 months. Long enough to establish himself, to build credibility, to position himself where he could monitor her without raising suspicion. Emily thought back through 3 years of interactions, every dismissive comment, every undermining remark, every situation where Weston had pushed her to the margins. She'd thought it was professional rivalry. It had been surveillance. "We need to find him," Hayes said. "If he's reporting to Garrick, he's already called in what happened here." "He's gone." Commander Osei appeared in the doorway, phone still pressed to her ear. "Security footage shows him leaving through the staff exit 8 minutes ago. He took his personal vehicle and disabled his phone's GPS. Then he's running, or regrouping." Osei ended her call and fixed Emily with a hard stare. "My protective detail is 15 minutes out, but we can't wait that long. Garrick will have people on the ground already, and this hospital just became a kill box. We need to move you now." Emily looked at Mitchell, still pale and weak but alive. Looked at the nurses who'd helped save him, civilians who had no idea they'd just walked into the middle of a military cover-up. Looked at Hayes and Martinez and Torres, good men who'd already put themselves in danger just by standing next to her. "Where would we go? Garrick has resources. He can track us anywhere." "Not anywhere." Hayes pulled a set of keys from his pocket. "I have a safe house 2 hours north, off-grid, no official records. We can get you there, lock it down, and buy time for Osei to build a case." "And what happens to everyone here? To Mitchell? To all the other patients Weston might have access to?" "Hospital administration is being notified as we speak. They'll revoke his credentials, flag him in the system. That's not enough." Emily's voice had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded storms. "Garrick's been covering this up for 8 years. He's had time to build contingencies, to plant people, to create fail-safes. Running won't stop him. It'll just delay the inevitable." "Then what do you suggest?" Emily looked at each of them. Hayes with his tactical mind, Osei with her intelligence resources, Martinez and Torres with their combat experience, Mitchell, still recovering but already trying to sit up despite the pain, Sarah, who'd appeared in the doorway with wide eyes and a coffee cup trembling in her hands. All these people drawn into this mess because she dared to stop being invisible for one night. "I suggest we stop playing defense," Emily said. "Garrick thinks I'm a liability he can eliminate quietly. He thinks I've been in hiding because I'm scared or guilty or broken. He's wrong." She straightened, feeling something settle into place. Not peace, but purpose. "I'm done hiding, I'm done running, and I'm done letting him control the narrative." "That's suicide," Osei said flatly. "You can't take on a lieutenant colonel with Pentagon connections and expect to win." "I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to make him expose himself." Emily turned to Hayes. "You said you wanted to close Owen's case. You said you wanted answers. So did I, once. Now I want justice." "How?" "By doing what I should have done 8 years ago, by telling the truth." Emily pulled out her phone, opening the camera app. "If Garrick's been monitoring me, he knows everything that happened in the last 24 hours. He knows David Mitchell recognized me. He knows military personnel have been making contact. He knows Osei's started asking questions. He's already moving to contain the damage. So we make the damage uncontainable. We go public." Emily hit record, and the phone's red light blinked to life. "My name is Emily Carter. 8 years ago, I was a combat medic attached to the 75th Ranger Regiment in Afghanistan. I was declared killed in action, but that was a lie. I survived. My partner, Staff Sergeant Owen Hughes, didn't. He was murdered, shot in the back of the head at close range by someone in our own unit. And for 8 years, the people responsible have been covering it up." Hayes moved to stop her, but Martinez blocked him. "Let her talk." Emily kept going, words pouring out like something long damned, finally breaking free. "I've been hiding because I thought I was guilty, because I believed I'd failed Owen by making a tactical decision that left him vulnerable. But I was wrong. Owen died because someone wanted him dead, because someone used an enemy ambush as cover for murder, and that someone has been using their position and authority to make sure the truth never came out." She detailed everything: the convoy, the ambush, the logistics team they'd been trying to reach, the major who'd told her to disappear, the forensic evidence that proved Owen's death wasn't what it seemed. She named Garrick. She named Weston. She named everyone and everything she could remember, burning bridges and scorching earth, making sure there was no way back. When she finally stopped, her hands were shaking and her voice was raw. She ended the recording and looked at Osei. "Where can I send this so it can't be buried?" Osei stared at her for a long moment. Then something like respect flickered across her face. "Give me the phone. I know some journalists who specialize in military scandals. This will be online in 20 minutes and impossible to scrub." "You understand what you just did?" Hayes asked Emily. "You can't take that back." "I don't want to take it back. I want Garrick to see it. I want him to know I'm not afraid anymore." "He'll come for you." "Good. I'm tired of waiting for the other shoe to drop." Osei took the phone and disappeared into the hallway, already making calls. Torres moved to the window, checking sightlines. Martinez stayed at the door, eyes scanning the corridor. Hayes just looked at Emily like he was trying to decide if she was brave or insane. "For what it's worth," he finally said, "Owen would have been proud of you." Emily's throat tightened, but she didn't let herself break. "He'd probably say I was being stupid." "Maybe, but he'd back you up anyway. That's what good soldiers do." Before Emily could respond, the hospital's PA system crackled to life. "Security alert. All personnel be advised. We have an unauthorized entry on the ground floor, East Wing. Security teams respond." Martinez's head snapped up. "That was fast. Too fast." Torres pulled his phone out, checking something. "Osei hasn't even uploaded the video yet. This isn't a response to what Emily just recorded." "Then what is it?" The lights went out. Emergency backup kicked in after 3 seconds of darkness, bathing everything in that sickly red glow that made the world look like an open wound. The PA system crackled again, but this time it was just static. Someone had cut the main power. Hayes pulled a weapon from somewhere. When had he been carrying? And moved to the door beside Martinez. "We need to move. Now." Emily grabbed Mitchell's arm, helping him sit up. "Can you walk?" "I can crawl if I have to." "Walking's better. Sarah, help me get him mobile." Sarah didn't hesitate, moving to Mitchell's other side. Between them, they got him upright, got his arm around their shoulders. He was heavy and weak, and every step clearly hurt, but he didn't complain. They moved into the hallway just as the stairwell door at the far end exploded inward. Not kicked open, blown with a small charge that sent metal shrapnel pinging off the walls. 3 men in black tactical gear poured through, weapons up, moving with professional efficiency. "Contact!" Torres shouted, pulling Emily and Mitchell back into the room. Gunfire erupted. Short, controlled bursts, suppressed but still loud in the confined space. Hayes returned fire from the doorway, forcing the attackers to take cover. Martinez grabbed a crash cart and shoved it into the corridor, creating a makeshift barricade. "We need another exit," Hayes barked. "Torres, options?" "Service stairs at the west end, but we'd have to cross 30 feet of open corridor to reach them." "Not an option." "Then we hold here and wait for backup." "We don't have backup. Osei's detail is still 10 minutes out and hospital security isn't equipped for this." Emily's mind raced through the building's layout, through years of working these floors, through knowledge most people didn't pay attention to. "There's a supply elevator 2 doors down. It goes to the basement loading dock. If we can reach it." Another explosion cut her off. This time it was closer. One of the attackers using a breaching charge on a room 3 doors down. Smoke filled the hallway. The fire alarm started screaming. "That's our cover," Emily said. "The smoke. We move now, while they can't see." Hayes didn't argue. "Torres, take point. Martinez, rear guard. I'll cover. Move." They pushed into the hallway, Mitchell between Emily and Sarah, stumbling but moving. The smoke was thick, acrid, burning eyes and lungs. Emergency lighting strobed red through the haze. Somewhere behind them, Emily heard shouting, more gunfire, the sounds of doors being kicked in. The supply elevator was a small industrial unit, meant for moving equipment and supplies. Emily hit the call button, and the ancient mechanism groaned to life with agonizing slowness. 30 seconds? 20. The smoke was clearing. Someone was moving toward them through the haze. "Faster!" Torres muttered, weapon trained on the approaching shadow. The elevator dinged, doors rattled open. They piled in. Emily and Sarah supporting Mitchell, Hayes and Torres facing outward, Martinez hitting the basement button. The doors started to close. A figure emerged from the smoke 10 feet away. Not tactical gear, a suit. Wire frame glasses catching the emergency lights. Dr. Weston holding something in his hand that glinted metal. "Emily Carter," he called out. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "You should have stayed dead." Martinez raised his weapon, but Weston was faster, throwing whatever he held. It clattered to the elevator floor just as the doors sealed shut. A small cylindrical object with a blinking red light. "Grenade!" Hayes shouted. "Get back!" But there was nowhere to go. The elevator was 6 feet by 6 feet, enclosed metal, a coffin if the device was real. Emily's hands moved on instinct, grabbing the cylinder and jamming it into the emergency access panel overhead. The panel was rubberized, meant to dampen vibration. The device detonated with a muffled crump that shook the entire elevator. The access panel blew outward instead of inward, directing most of the blast into the empty shaft above them. Shrapnel punched holes in the ceiling, but missed everyone by inches. The elevator kept descending, rattling now, damaged but functional. Emily's ears rang and her hands were bleeding from where she'd grabbed the grenade, but she was alive. They were all alive. "That was insane," Hayes said. "You could have been killed." "Would have been worse if I'd done nothing." The elevator lurched to a stop at the basement level. Doors opened onto a dimly lit loading dock that smelled like garbage and diesel fuel. Empty except for 2 delivery trucks and a scatter of discarded pallets. They moved quickly, Torres checking corners, Martinez covering their 6. Emily helped Mitchell toward the far exit, his breathing labored but steady. They were 20 feet from the door when it opened and Commander Osei walked in, 3 men in military fatigues behind her. Relief flooded through Emily. "You got here fast." "I was already in the parking garage when the power went out." "Who's shooting upstairs?" "Garrick's people. At least 3, maybe more." "Then we need to—" Osei stopped, her expression changing. She was looking past Emily, at something behind her. "Get down!" Emily didn't question. She dropped, pulling Mitchell and Sarah with her. Gunfire erupted from the direction of the elevator. One of Osei's men went down, clutching his shoulder. The others returned fire, but the attackers had better position, were using the trucks for cover. Hayes crawled to Emily. "We're pinned. If we try to run, they'll cut us down." "Then we don't run. We fight." "You're not armed." "No, but I know this hospital better than they do." Emily looked at the loading dock's layout. Trucks, pallets, an industrial sink, chemical storage for cleaning supplies. "Give me 30 seconds. She didn't wait for permission. She low-crawled to the chemical storage, ignoring bullets sparking off concrete behind her. Grabbed 2 bottles, industrial bleach, ammonia-based cleaner. Mixed them in a plastic bucket, creating a toxic gas that made her eyes water instantly. "Cover me," she called to Hayes. "I'm going to flush them out." She waited until Torres laid down suppressing fire, then hurled the bucket toward the elevator. It shattered against the wall and yellow-green gas billowed outward. Chlorine gas, not lethal at this concentration, but enough to make breathing impossible, enough to force movement. The attackers stumbled out of the smoke, eyes streaming, coughing. Osei's remaining men took them down with precise shots. Legs, shoulders, disabling but not killing. Within 20 seconds, all 3 attackers were on the ground, zip-tied and disarmed. Osei stared at Emily. "Where did you learn to do that?" "Combat medic training includes field-expedient weapons. We didn't just save lives." Emily moved to check on Osei's wounded man, already assessing the shoulder injury. Through and through, missed the artery. He'll live. She worked quickly, using supplies from a first aid kit on the wall to pack and bandage the wound. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over, and for the first time in 8 years, Emily Carter felt like herself again. Not the quiet nurse, not the invisible woman, the combat medic who'd kept people alive in hell. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Police. Fire department. Maybe FBI. The kind of response you couldn't contain or control. Hayes pulled out his phone, checking something, then his expression went dark. "Osei, did you upload Emily's video?" "Sent it to 3 different journalists 5 minutes ago. Why?" "Because it's already gone viral. 500,000 views and climbing. Every major news outlet is picking it up." He showed Emily the screen. Her face filled it, her voice steady and clear, telling the truth that couldn't be untold. "You wanted Garrick to see it. Mission accomplished. The whole world's seeing it now." Emily felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief exactly, but the feeling of finally putting down weight she'd been carrying too long. Good. You understand this means you can't hide anymore. Your face is everywhere. Your name is trending. There's no taking it back. I don't want to take it back. Osei's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then held it out to Emily. It's for you. Emily took the phone slowly. Hello? Hello, Emily. The voice was smooth, educated, holding the kind of authority that came from years in command. She'd heard it once before, 8 years ago, telling her to disappear. This is Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Garrick. I believe we need to talk. Emily's hand tightened on the phone. Around her, everyone had gone still. Hayes with his weapon half lowered, Osei frozen mid-step. Even the zip-tied attackers on the floor seemed to be holding their breath. The loading dock felt smaller suddenly, walls pressing in. I have nothing to say to you, Emily said. That's unfortunate, because I have quite a bit to say to you. Garrick's voice held no anger, no threat, just cold calculation. You've made a very public accusation against me, half-truths wrapped in emotional appeal. It's effective theater, I'll grant you that. But theater isn't evidence. The forensics on Owen's body is evidence. Forensics that raise a question, certainly, but questions aren't answers, and without answers, all you have is speculation. He paused. Tell me, Emily, do you actually remember what happened that day? Or have you spent 8 years filling in the gaps with assumptions? Emily's jaw clenched. I remember enough. Do you? Because I've read the field reports. You were found 3 days after the ambush, severely dehydrated, hypothermic, barely conscious. The doctor said you were experiencing traumatic dissociation, memory gaps, temporal confusion. Another pause, deliberate. In that state, the mind creates narratives to fill the void. It's not lying, it's trying to make sense of trauma. But those narratives aren't reliable. Owen was shot in the back of the head at close range with an American weapon. That's not a narrative, that's a fact. A fact that proves someone killed Staff Sergeant Hughes. It doesn't prove who, and it certainly doesn't prove I had anything to do with it. Garrick's tone shifted slightly, became almost sympathetic. I understand why you need someone to blame. Survivor's guilt is a powerful force. But turning that guilt outward, toward me, toward Dr. Weston, it's misdirected anger, Emily, and it's going to destroy what's left of your life. Hayes was shaking his head, mouthing the word, hang up. But Emily couldn't. Something in Garrick's voice hooked into her, demanded response. If you're innocent, why did you tell me to disappear 8 years ago? Because you were a liability. Not to me, to yourself. You just watched your partner die. You were spiraling. I gave you an out, a way to heal away from the spotlight. That was mercy, not conspiracy. And Dr. Weston, was he mercy too? Dr. Weston was assigned to monitor your psychological state and report if you showed signs of instability that might endanger patients. That's standard procedure for medical personnel with combat trauma. Garrick's voice hardened slightly. The fact that you've now assaulted hospital staff, created a hostage situation, and caused a firefight in a civilian medical facility rather proves my point, doesn't it? Emily felt the ground shifting under her feet. Garrick was good. Better than she'd expected. He was reframing everything, making her look unstable, making reasonable people doubt. I didn't assault anyone. Your people attacked the hospital. My people? Emily, I'm a lieutenant colonel stationed at the Pentagon. I don't command strike teams. I don't order hits on nurses. He sounded genuinely puzzled. The men who attacked Mercy General were likely hired by someone else. Someone who wants this situation to escalate. Someone who benefits from chaos. Who? I have suspicions. But without proof, I'd be doing exactly what you're doing, making accusations I can't substantiate. Garrick let that hang for a moment. Here's what I can prove. I can prove that you falsified your credentials to obtain employment at Mercy General. I can prove that you've been living under a fraudulent identity for 8 years. I can prove that when confronted about this fraud, you became violent and endangered innocent people. Those are felonies, Emily, federal charges, and they're all documented. Osei grabbed the phone from Emily's hand and put it on speaker. This is Commander Patricia Osei, Office of Naval Intelligence. Lieutenant Colonel Garrick, you're aware this conversation is being recorded? Of course, I assumed as much. Garrick didn't sound concerned. Commander, I appreciate your involvement, but this situation is above your clearance level. I recommend you extract your personnel and let proper channels handle it. Proper channels covered up a murder for 8 years. Proper channels investigated an ambush that resulted in multiple casualties, including the presumed death of a combat medic. The investigation was thorough and conclusive. What you're calling a cover-up was classified operational security. His tone cooled. And if you continue pursuing this without authorization, you'll find yourself on the wrong side of an obstruction charge. Osei's face had gone tight with fury, but before she could respond, Hayes took the phone. Colonel Garrick, this is Colonel Marcus Hayes, Army CID. I've been reviewing Emily Carter's service record and the circumstances of her disappearance. There are significant irregularities that warrant further investigation. Then investigate, Colonel. Use proper procedures, file proper requests, and I'll cooperate fully. Garrick's voice shifted again, became almost friendly. But keep Emily Carter out of it. She's not a reliable witness. She's a traumatized veteran who's spent 8 years running from ghosts. Putting her in front of cameras, letting her make wild accusations. You're not helping her. You're weaponizing her pain. The words hit harder than Emily wanted to admit, because there was truth in them. She had been running. She had been broken. And now she was standing in a hospital loading dock with bleeding hands and smoke in her lungs, surrounded by people who'd been drawn into her mess. Hayes must have seen something in her expression because his voice hardened. Emily Carter saved lives under fire. She's earned the benefit of the doubt. I agree completely, which is why I'm offering her a way out. Garrick addressed Emily directly now. Turn yourself in. Cooperate with a psychological evaluation. Let me help you get the treatment you need. In exchange, I'll make sure the fraud charges are reduced, that you get credit for your service, that you're remembered as a hero who struggled but ultimately sought help. And if I don't, then I'll be forced to defend myself against baseless accusations. I'll release your full psychological profile. The dissociative episodes, the memory gaps, the fact that 3 different psychiatrists recommended you be medically discharged before you ever deployed to Afghanistan. I'll show the world that Emily Carter was never stable enough for combat duty, that she was a ticking time bomb who was discharged, who faked credentials, who's now having a very public breakdown. He paused. Your choice, victim or villain, hero or fraud. The line went dead. Emily stood there holding the phone, her reflection ghost pale in the screen. Around her, the others were talking. Hayes arguing with Osei about jurisdiction, Torres checking on Mitchell, Martinez radioing for backup. But it all felt distant, underwater, like she was watching from somewhere else. He's bluffing. Osei took the phone back. He wouldn't release sealed medical records. That's a federal violation. He won't have to. Emily's voice came out flat. The moment I made that video public, I invited scrutiny. Journalists are going to dig. They're going to find inconsistencies in my story, gaps in my timeline. They're going to interview people who will say I was unstable, that I shouldn't have been deployed, and Garrick will leak just enough to point them in the right direction without technically breaking any laws. Then we find proof before that happens. We find whoever killed Owen Hughes, and we make them talk. How? We don't even know who was in that convoy. We don't know who had access to Owen's location. We don't know anything except that someone with power has been very good at covering their tracks for 8 years. Hayes moved closer, lowering his voice. Emily, I've been doing this a long time. The people who commit these kinds of crimes, they don't do it alone. They leave traces, paper trails, witness statements, someone who saw something they shouldn't have. He gripped her shoulder. We will find it, but we need you focused. Can you do that? Emily met his eyes and saw something she hadn't expected. Absolute certainty. He believed in her. Not just in her innocence, but in her ability to see this through. Yeah, she said, I can do that. Sirens were right outside now. The loading dock's exterior door burst open and police poured in, weapons drawn, shouting orders. Emily raised her hands slowly, making no sudden movements. The others did the same. Within 30 seconds, they were all separated, hands behind backs, being patted down and questioned. A detective in a rumpled suit pushed through the crowd, 50-something, gray stubble, eyes that had seen too much to be impressed by much. He looked at the scene. 3 zip-tied attackers, 1 wounded security officer, smoke still drifting from the elevator shaft, and shook his head. Someone want to tell me what the hell happened here? Osei stepped forward, showing her naval intelligence credentials. Commander Patricia Osei. These individuals were defending themselves against an armed assault. The attackers are restrained on the floor. We'll need them processed and held pending federal charges. The detective studied her credentials, then looked at Emily. You're Emily Carter, the one from the video. Yes. You got a permit to carry that grenade you threw? It wasn't mine. One of the attackers, save it for the statement, he gestured to a uniformed officer. Get her somewhere secure, and someone call the FBI. This just became their problem. Emily was escorted to a windowless room on the hospital's ground floor, conference room converted to temporary holding area, metal chair bolted to the floor, camera in the corner recording everything. She sat down and waited. 20 minutes later, the door opened and two people walked in. Not cops. Federal agents, you could tell by the suits, by the way they carried themselves like they had authority that transcended local jurisdictions. Ms. Carter, I'm Agent Lisa Brennan, FBI. This is Agent James Park. We need to ask you some questions about the video you posted and the events that followed. Emily nodded. I'll tell you everything I know. Good. Let's start with Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Garrick. You accused him of covering up a murder. What evidence do you have to support that claim? Emily laid it out methodically. The ambush, Owen's death, the forensics results, Garrick's order for her to disappear, Dr. Weston's surveillance, the attack on David Mitchell. She spoke clearly, without embellishment, sticking to facts she could prove. Brennan took notes, her expression neutral. Park asked occasional questions, probing for specifics, for timelines, for names. When Emily finished, they exchanged a glance that she couldn't read. Ms. Carter, are you aware that Lieutenant Colonel Garrick filed a formal complaint against you 3 hours ago? Brennan pulled out a document. He's alleging that you've made defamatory statements, that you fabricated evidence, and that you pose a danger to yourself and others. He's requesting a psychiatric hold pending evaluation. Emily's stomach dropped. We know what it is. Park cut her off. We've been investigating Garrick for 6 months. Your video just accelerated our timeline considerably. The words took a moment to register. You've been investigating him? We can't discuss the details of an ongoing investigation, but I can tell you that you're not the first person to raise concerns about Lieutenant Colonel Garrick's conduct. You're just the first one willing to go public. Brennan leaned forward. Which makes you valuable to us, and also makes you a target. Garrick is smart. He's well connected, and he's got 8 years of preparation on his side. If we're going to take him down, we need more than your testimony. We need irrefutable evidence. What kind of evidence? The kind that proves he gave the order to kill Owen Hughes. The kind that proves he's been covering it up ever since. The kind that shows motive. Park pulled out a tablet, swiped to something, then turned it so Emily could see. Tell me what you know about this. The screen showed a classified document, heavily redacted, but enough visible to make Emily's blood run cold. It was a transport manifest. The logistics convoy she'd been trying to reach when her vehicle was ambushed, the one that had called for medical assistance. I don't understand. What am I looking at? Those vehicles were carrying sensitive equipment being transferred from a black site to secure storage. Prototype technology. Very expensive. Very classified. Park zoomed in on a section. According to the manifest, all equipment arrived safely, but according to subsequent inventory checks conducted 6 months later, 3 crates were missing. Someone stole them during the transfer and made it look like they were destroyed in the ambush. Emily's mind raced. You think Owen knew about the theft? We think Owen saw something he shouldn't have. Maybe stumbled on evidence. Maybe overheard the wrong conversation. And whoever was behind it couldn't risk him talking. Brennan's expression was grim. The ambush on your convoy wasn't coincidental. It was meant to kill both of you. When you survived, they tried to make you disappear by convincing you to run. And it almost worked. Who's they? Is it just Garrick? We don't know yet, but we know the stolen equipment showed up 2 years later in a weapons deal in Eastern Europe. We traced it back to a shell company with ties to several former military officers. Garrick's name isn't directly linked, but his signature appears on authorization documents that enabled the theft. Emily felt pieces clicking into place. Horrible, inevitable pieces. Owen died because someone wanted to steal weapons. And I've been hiding because I thought it was my fault. It was never your fault. Park closed the tablet. But now we need you to help us prove it. Will you work with us? What do you need me to do? First, we need you safe. Garrick's going to move against you, probably within the next few hours. He'll use legal channels, psychiatric holds, arrest warrants, anything that discredits you before trial. Brennan stood up. We can offer protective custody, but it means going dark. No contact with friends, family, anyone from your old life. Emily thought about David Mitchell 3 floors up, still recovering. About Hayes and Torres and Martinez who'd put themselves in danger to protect her. About the hospital staff who'd worked beside her for 3 years without knowing who she really was. I'm done hiding. If Garrick wants to come at me, let him. I'll fight it in the open. That's brave but stupid, Park said bluntly. He has resources you can't match. Maybe, but I have something he doesn't. Emily met their eyes. I have the truth. And now, thanks to that video, I have witnesses. People saw what happened at this hospital. They saw his men attack. They saw me fight back. That's not the profile of someone having a breakdown. That's someone defending herself. Brennan considered this, then nodded slowly. All right, we'll do it your way. But you stay close to our people. And if things go sideways, you follow our lead. Deal? Deal. They released her 40 minutes later. The hospital was crawling with federal agents now, interviewing staff, collecting evidence, processing the crime scene. Emily found Hayes and the others in a waiting area outside the ICU. Mitchell had been moved to a secure room with 2 agents posted outside. How is he? Emily asked. Stable, pissed off, demanding to talk to you. Hayes handed her a coffee. You look like hell. Feel worse. She took a sip. Bitter, lukewarm, perfect. FBI wants to use me as bait. They think Garrick will make a move. He already has. Torres held up his phone. Check the news. Emily looked at the screen and her heart sank. The headline read, Disgraced Combat Medics Breakdown. Military officials question Carter's mental state. The article cited unnamed sources claiming Emily had a history of psychological instability, that she'd been flagged multiple times for dissociative episodes, that her accusations against Garrick were part of a documented pattern of paranoid delusions. That was fast, Martinez muttered. He promised me he'd do this. Guess he wasn't bluffing. Emily scrolled through the article. Carefully worded, legally airtight, devastating. Comments below were already splitting into camps, some defending her, most questioning her credibility. How do we fight this? Same way you started it, with the truth. Ose appeared from around the corner, looking energized despite the chaos. I've been making calls. 3 former members of your unit are willing to go on record about Garrick. They've seen things over the years, orders that didn't make sense, investigations that got shut down, people who asked questions and suddenly got reassigned to dead-end posts. Individually, it's all circumstantial. Together, it's a pattern. Will it be enough? Combined with the FBI's evidence about the weapons theft? Maybe. But we need one more thing. Osi pulled out her tablet. We need whoever pulled the trigger on Owen Hughes. Because without that, Garrick can claim he was just following protocol, that any irregularities were bureaucratic errors, that he had no knowledge of criminal activity. So we need a confession, or recordings, or documents, something that directly ties him to the murder. Emily thought back to that day 8 years ago, trying to remember details through the fog of trauma and time. The ambush, the screaming, Owen bleeding out in the dirt, her making the choice to leave him, to help the others, coming back to find him gone. Wait. Something clicked. The logistics convoy, the one we were trying to reach, they had combat recorders in their vehicles, dashboard cameras, helmet cams, the works. Standard protocol for sensitive cargo. Those recordings would have been seized as evidence. Exactly. And if the ambush on their convoy happened before ours, those cameras might have caught something. Whoever set up the ambushes, whoever coordinated them, they would have been on those radios, giving orders. Ose's eyes lit up. The FBI might already have those recordings if they've been building a case. We just need to know what to listen for. I can tell you exactly what to listen for. Emily's hands had stopped shaking. Her mind felt clear for the first time in hours. When I was scavenging supplies after our attack, I heard radio chatter, someone giving orders to fall back to let the cleanup crew handle the stragglers. I thought it was enemy communications, but if it was someone coordinating both ambushes, then we have him. Hayes pulled out his phone. I'll call Agent Brennan. If those recordings exist, we need them now. While Hayes made the call, Emily walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. Dawn was breaking, painting everything gold and red. She'd been awake for more than 24 hours, had fought, and bled and nearly died multiple times. She should have been exhausted. Instead, she felt wired, alive in a way she hadn't been since Afghanistan. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Final offer. Walk away now and I'll make sure the psychiatric charges are dropped. Keep pushing and I'll destroy you." Emily stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Come try." She deleted the message and turned to find everyone watching her. "What?" she asked. "You've got that look," Martinez said. "The one you used to get before a mission, like you'd already won and were just waiting for everyone else to catch up." "I haven't won anything yet." "No, but you're going to." He said it with absolute certainty, because you're too stubborn to do anything else. Agent Brennan arrived 30 minutes later with a laptop and a grim expression. "We found the recordings. You need to hear this." They gathered in a private conference room. Emily, Hayes, Osei, Martinez, Torres, and the two FBI agents. Brennan opened the laptop and pulled up an audio file. "This is from the logistics convoy's lead vehicle, approximately 40 minutes before your convoy was ambushed. The voices have been analyzed and identified." She hit play. Static. Engine noise. Then voices, muffled but audible. "Confirm visual on the medical team. They're 15 minutes out from your position." "Copy that. Alpha team is in position. Bravo is setting the secondary charge on the medical route. Remember, we need the cargo intact and the witnesses gone. No loose ends." "What about the medic?" "Orders were specific. The medic knows too much." Hughes talked to her. "We can't risk her either. Make it look like hostile action and leave nothing identifiable." Emily's blood turned to ice. That voice, she knew that voice. "Who is that?" she asked. "The one giving orders." Brennan pulled up a file. Major Thomas Garrick, as he was ranked at the time. He was coordinating logistics for the transfer. He had access to route information, timing, personnel rosters, everything needed to set up the ambush. And the person responding? "We're still working on voice identification, but we have a lead." Park pulled up a photo. "Does this man look familiar?" Emily's stomach lurched. Dr. Richard Weston stared back from the photo, but younger, in military fatigues, wearing captain's insignia. Weston was military? Captain Richard Weston, Army Intelligence. He served in the same operational theater as Garrick. They were assigned to the same classified project, the one that was transporting the stolen equipment. Park's expression was hard. "Weston wasn't assigned to monitor you at the hospital. He was assigned to make sure you never remembered what really happened. And if you did start remembering, to make sure you looked too unstable to be believed." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Weston's hostility, his constant undermining, the way he'd positioned himself to observe and control. It hadn't been professional rivalry. It had been a surveillance operation lasting 3 years. "Where is he now?" Emily asked quietly. "Unknown. He disappeared after the hospital attack. We have warrants out, but he's gone to ground." Brennan closed the laptop. "Which brings us to Garrick. These recordings prove he ordered the ambush. They prove he targeted you and Owen specifically, but they don't prove he killed Owen. And without that, he can claim he was acting on intelligence that suggested your convoy was compromised, that he was trying to prevent the stolen equipment from being taken by hostiles. He'll say he was doing his job," Osei translated, "following orders, making hard tactical decisions. He'll throw Weston under the bus and walk away. Unless we can prove he gave the direct order to execute Owen Hughes." Hayes looked at Emily. "You said you found Owen's body 3 days after the ambush. Did you see anything else? Anything that might indicate who killed him?" Emily closed her eyes, forcing herself back to that moment. The ravine. The heat. Owen's body already starting to decompose in the sun. The bullet wound in his skull. She'd been so focused on the wound, on the horror of finding him like that she hadn't looked for anything else. But now, with 8 years of distance, she could see the scene differently, could analyze it the way she'd been trained. "His hands," she said slowly. "They were zip-tied behind his back, military-grade restraints. I didn't process it at the time. I thought maybe insurgents had captured him, but insurgents don't use American zip ties." "What else?" "His weapon was missing, his radio was smashed, and..." She opened her eyes. "There was a boot print in the dirt next to him. Clear impression, like someone had stood there after he was already down. U.S. military issue, size 12 or 13. Park was already typing notes. We can subpoena Garrick's service records, get his boot size, compare impressions. That's circumstantial at best, Brennan interrupted. We need more. We need someone who was there, someone who saw Garrick give the order or pull the trigger himself. Weston would have been there, Emily said. He was responding to Garrick's orders on the recording. He was part of the cleanup crew. Then we find Weston. We offer him a deal. Testify against Garrick, and we'll reduce his charges. He's a coward. He'll talk. The door burst open and a hospital security guard stuck his head in. Agent Brennan, you need to see this. Now. They followed him to the security office where a dozen monitors showed feeds from around the hospital. One screen was paused on a frame that made Emily's breath catch. Dr. Richard Weston, walking through the main entrance 30 minutes ago. Not running, not hiding, walking in like he belonged there. He's still in the building, the guard said. We spotted him on 3 different cameras heading toward the ICU. Mitchell. Emily was already moving. He's going after Mitchell. They ran. Emily in front, despite having no weapon, despite still being in blood-stained scrubs, despite every logical reason to let the agents with guns take point. They hit the 3rd floor at full sprint and Emily's heart nearly stopped. The 2 agents posted outside Mitchell's room were down. Not dead, she could see them breathing, but unconscious, zip-tied, radios smashed. The door to Mitchell's room stood open. Emily burst through and froze. Dr. Richard Weston stood beside Mitchell's bed, with a syringe in one hand and Mitchell's IV line in the other. Mitchell was awake, but couldn't move, couldn't speak. Another paralytic. His eyes tracked Emily with desperate, terrified awareness. Don't. Weston's voice was steady. Another step, and I push this into his line. 2 seconds, and his heart stops. You won't have time to save him. Emily raised her hands slowly. Behind her, she could hear Hayes and the others taking positions in the hallway, but none of them had a clear shot. Weston had positioned himself perfectly, using Mitchell's body as a shield, using the bed and equipment as cover. You don't want to do this, Emily said. You have no idea what I want. You never did. Weston's hand trembled slightly but didn't move away from the IV port. You were supposed to die in that desert. You and Hughes both. It would have been clean. No questions, no investigations. But you survived. You always survive. Owen didn't. No, he didn't. Because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. Couldn't let it go. He figured out what we'd done with the cargo, and he was going to report it. So Garrick made a call, and I followed orders. That's how it works in the military. You follow orders. Emily took a careful step forward. You shot him. I did what was necessary. You executed him. You put a gun to his head, and you killed him while he was restrained and helpless. He was a liability. Weston's composure cracked. You don't understand the stakes. That equipment was worth millions. It could have funded operations, saved lives, changed outcomes. One man's life against all that? The math is simple. The math is you're a murderer and a coward, and now you're trapped. Emily gestured to the cameras in the room's corners. Everything you just said is being recorded. It's over, Weston. He glanced at the cameras, and something wild flickered in his eyes. It's only over if I let it be over, but I've got one card left to play. He moved the syringe closer to the IV port. Garrick walks away clean, or Mitchell dies and you watch. Your choice. Garrick's already done. The FBI has the recordings, they have the forensics, they have everything they need. They have circumstantial evidence and hearsay. Without my testimony, they can't prove Garrick ordered the hit. He'll claim I went rogue, that he had no knowledge of the execution. He'll walk, and I'll take the fall alone. Weston's voice had gone desperate. Unless you give me a reason to talk. Immunity. Witness protection. A new life. Emily met Mitchell's eyes. Saw the trust there. The absolute certainty that she would find a way. The same look Owen had given her 8 years ago before she'd left him in that dirt. You want immunity? Fine. You'll get immunity. Just put down the syringe. You can't promise that. Agent Brennan can. Emily glanced back. Right? Brennan appeared in the doorway, hands visible, no weapon. Dr. Weston, I'm authorized to offer you a deal. Full immunity in exchange for testimony against Lieutenant Colonel Garrick, but you have to put down the syringe and you have to do it now. Weston hesitated, his hand shaking worse now. Sweat ran down his face. How do I know you'll keep your word? You don't. But you don't have any other options. You're not walking out of here. You're either leaving in handcuffs or a body bag. This is the only way you survive." The moment stretched impossibly long. Emily could hear her own heartbeat, could see the calculations running behind Weston's eyes, could feel Mitchell's life hanging by the thread of one man's fear. Then Weston lowered the syringe, just slightly, just enough. Emily moved, fast, closing the distance before he could react, grabbing his wrist, twisting until the syringe dropped and clattered across the floor. Weston tried to fight back, but she was faster, stronger, fueled by 8 years of rage. She slammed him against the wall and held him there while agents poured in behind her. They cuffed him, read his rights, dragged him out while he was still shouting about deals and immunity and how he was just following orders. Emily stayed at Mitchell's bedside, pulling the IV line before any residual medication could enter his bloodstream. She checked his vitals, adjusted his oxygen, worked with practiced efficiency until his eyes could focus again, until his breathing normalized. "You good?" she asked. He nodded weakly. "You made it. Again. Someone's got to keep you alive. 3 times now. I'm starting to think you're stuck with me." Emily almost smiled. "Could be worse." Hayes appeared in the doorway. "Weston's talking, already lawyered up and cutting deals, but he's talking. He's giving us everything. Dates, locations, communications with Garrick, the whole conspiracy. It's enough to bring charges." "What about Garrick?" "FBI's moving on him now. They've got agents at the Pentagon with arrest warrants. He'll be in custody within the hour." Hayes stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You did it, Emily. You got justice for Owen." The words should have felt like victory, should have felt like closure. Instead, Emily just felt tired. Tired and old and empty. Justice doesn't bring him back. No. But it means he didn't die for nothing. It means his death exposed something that needed to be exposed. That's worth something. Maybe it was. Emily didn't know anymore. She pulled up a chair and sat beside Mitchell's bed, letting the exhaustion finally catch up with her. Agents came and went. Statements were taken. Evidence was processed. The hospital slowly returned to something resembling normal, though nothing would ever be quite normal again. Emily sat through all of it, answered questions when asked, stayed quiet otherwise. It was almost noon when her phone rang. Agent Brennan's number. "Emily, you need to turn on the news." Emily found a TV in the waiting room. Every channel showed the same image. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Garrick in handcuffs being led out of the Pentagon by federal agents. The chyron read, "Pentagon official arrested in connection with 2016 murder weapons theft." But it was Garrick's face that held Emily's attention. Even in handcuffs, even surrounded by agents, he looked calm, controlled, like this was a minor inconvenience rather than the end of his career. Then just before he was pushed into the waiting vehicle, he looked directly at the camera. Directly at Emily somehow. His lips moved, forming 3 words she could read even without sound. "This isn't over." The vehicle door slammed shut. The convoy pulled away. And Emily Carter, sitting alone in a hospital waiting room, felt ice settle into her bones. Because Garrick was right. This wasn't over. He had resources, connections, years of building networks and accumulating favors. Even from prison, even facing trial, he could still reach out, could still make things happen. And he just declared war. Emily stared at the TV screen long after Garrick disappeared into the vehicle, those 3 words still burning in her mind. Around her, the waiting room had erupted into conversation, staff discussing the arrest, patients pointing at the screen, everyone suddenly recognizing her face from the news footage playing on repeat. She turned away from the attention and walked back toward Mitchell's room, needing something concrete to focus on. But halfway down the corridor, she stopped. Dr. Monica Reeves stood blocking her path, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Carter, my office, now!" Emily followed without argument. The walk felt longer than it should have, every step heavy with the weight of what came next. Reeves's office was exactly as Emily remembered. Cluttered desk, coffee-stained reports, walls covered in certifications, and commendations earned over 40 years of emergency medicine. Reeves closed the door and didn't sit down. Neither did Emily. "I've spent the last 4 hours on the phone," Reeves said. "Hospital administration, legal counsel, the state medical board, federal agents. Every single one of them has an opinion about what should happen to you." She paused. "You want to know what I think?" "I assume you're going to tell me regardless. I think you're the best trauma nurse I've ever worked with. I think you saved more lives in 3 years than most people save in a lifetime. And I think you've been punishing yourself for something that was never your fault. Reeves's voice softened slightly. I also think you lied on your employment application, practiced under credentials that weren't entirely accurate, and created a situation that's going to cost this hospital millions in legal fees and public relations damage. Emily's jaw tightened. I understand. I'll clear out my locker. I didn't say I was firing you. You're not? I can't. Turns out your military medical training exceeds state requirements for nursing certification by about 3 levels. Commander Osi fast-tracked your credentials through proper channels this morning. As of 2 hours ago, Emily Carter is legally qualified to practice emergency medicine in this state. Reeves pulled a folder from her desk. In fact, according to this paperwork, you're qualified to do a lot more than just nursing. Emily took the folder, opened it, and felt something catch in her throat. It was a job offer, not for staff nurse, for emergency medicine training coordinator responsible for developing trauma protocols and teaching advanced life-saving techniques to incoming personnel. I don't understand. You demonstrated skills yesterday that most of my staff will never have, skills that could save lives if they were properly taught and implemented. I want you to teach them. Reeves met her eyes. But I need to know you're staying, that you're done running, because I can't build a program around someone who disappears the moment things get uncomfortable. Emily looked at the offer. Better pay, better hours, actual authority to make changes. Everything she'd never let herself want because wanting meant staying, and staying meant being seen. What if Garrick tries something? What if his people come back? Then we deal with it, together, as a team. That's how it works when you stop trying to carry everything alone. Reeves's expression hardened. You saved David Mitchell's life 3 times in 2 days. You identified injuries no one else caught. You stood up to an armed assault and won. That's not someone who needs to hide. That's someone who needs to be in charge. Emily felt something shift inside her. Not relief, not quite happiness, but something closer to belonging. I'll need to think about it. You've got 24 hours. After that, I'm offering it to someone else. Reeves opened the door. And Carter, whatever happens with Garrick, whatever threats he makes, you're not alone anymore. Remember that. Emily walked out feeling lighter than she had in years. The corridor was quieter now, the immediate chaos settling into routine. She found Hayes and the others gathered in a consultation room, huddled around a laptop. What's happening? Hayes looked up. Weston's full confession just went public. Every news outlet has it. He's detailing the weapons theft, the cover-up. Garrick's direct involvement in ordering Owen's execution. It's everywhere. Emily watched the screen as clips played. Weston in an orange jumpsuit looking broken and small, describing how Garrick had orchestrated the ambush, how he'd personally executed Owen Hughes, how they'd spent 8 years burying evidence and silencing anyone who asked questions. The man who'd terrorized her for 3 years in this hospital had been reduced to a cooperating witness desperate to save himself. How's he taking it? Emily asked. Garrick. About as well as you'd expect. Osei pulled up another feed. His lawyers are calling it a witch hunt. They're claiming Weston's lying to reduce his sentence, that there's no physical evidence tying Garrick to the murder, that the recordings are taken out of context. But there is physical evidence, Emily remembered suddenly. Owen's body. When they exhumed him, they would have collected everything, including those zip ties I saw on his wrists. Already ahead of you. Park appeared in the doorway with a tablet. Forensics analyzed the restraints. They found DNA, skin cells, sweat, trace evidence from whoever applied them. We ran it through military databases. And? Perfect match for Dr. Richard Weston. But they also found a partial profile from someone else. Someone who handled the restraints after they were applied. Park pulled up an image. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Garrick. His DNA was on the zip ties. He was there when Owen Hughes was executed. He either watched it happen or participated directly. The room went silent. Emily felt something release in her chest. Final, irrefutable proof. Not just conspiracy, not just cover-up, direct involvement in murder. That's enough to convict him, Hayes said quietly. Even with the best lawyers, even with his connections, you can't explain away your DNA at a murder scene. When will they charge him? Already done. Federal prosecutors filed this morning. Murder, conspiracy, theft of government property, obstruction of justice. About 15 other counts. He's looking at life without parole. Emily sank into a chair, letting it sink in. 8 years. 8 years of running, of hiding, of carrying guilt that had never been hers to carry. And now, in less than 48 hours, everything had changed. The truth was out. Justice was coming. Owen's death would be answered. But victory felt hollow, empty. Because Owen was still gone and no amount of justice would bring him back. "You okay?" Martinez asked. "I don't know. I thought I'd feel different when this moment came, vindicated or relieved or something. Instead, I just feel tired." "That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline for 2 days. Your body's crashing." He pulled up a chair beside her. "But for what it's worth, you did good. You exposed something that needed exposing. You made sure Owen didn't die for nothing." Hayes said the same thing. "Because it's true. And because we've all been where you are, winning the fight but losing something in the process. It gets easier, eventually." Before Emily could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb the button. "This is Emily. Ms. Carter. This is Barbara Hughes, Owen's mother." Emily's breath stopped. In 8 years, she'd never contacted Owen's family, had convinced herself they wouldn't want to hear from her, that her survival would only remind them of what they'd lost. "Mrs. Hughes, I saw the news. I saw what you did, what you've been through." The older woman's voice was thick with emotion. "I wanted to thank you for fighting for the truth, for making sure people know Owen didn't die by accident. I should have fought 8 years ago. You should have done exactly what you did. You survived. You healed. And when you were ready, you told the truth." Mrs. Hughes paused. "Owen talked about you, in his letters home. He said you were the toughest person he'd ever met. Said you kept everyone calm when things got bad. Said if anything happened to him, you'd be the one to make it right." Emily's vision blurred. "He said that?" "He did. And he was right." Another pause. "I'm coming to visit. I'd like to meet you properly. To hear about my son's last days from someone who was there. I'd like that." They talked for another few minutes. Logistics, timing, shared grief, finding common ground. When Emily hung up, she found everyone in the room watching her with varied expressions of sympathy and respect. "You good?" Torres asked. "Getting there." The next 72 hours moved fast. Garrick's trial was expedited due to the severity of charges and the amount of evidence. The prosecution presented recordings, forensics, testimony from Weston and 3 other former soldiers who'd witnessed Garrick's corruption over the years. The defense tried every angle, questioning Emily's credibility, suggesting Weston was lying, arguing the DNA evidence was contaminated. None of it worked. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. Garrick was sentenced to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. The judge's words were scathing, calling him a disgrace to the uniform, a betrayal of everything the military stood for, a predator who'd used authority to commit murder and then spent 8 years crushing anyone who threatened to expose him. Emily watched the sentencing on a TV in the hospital break room, surrounded by colleagues who'd gradually learned to see her differently, not as the quiet nurse who stayed late and never complained, as someone who'd fought a war on 2 fronts, one in a desert 8 years ago, one in a hospital that had become a battlefield. When Garrick was led away in shackles, she felt something finally settle. Not closure. That was too clean a word for something this complicated. But maybe peace, or at least the possibility of it. Dr. Reeves found her there an hour later. "You signed that offer yet?" "I was thinking about negotiating. The salary seems low for someone who just took down a corrupt Pentagon official." Reeves almost smiled. "You want to negotiate? Fine. Tell me what you need." "I need Mitchell cleared for a prosthetic consult. I need the ER budget increased so we can actually stock what we need. And I need authority to fire anyone who treats staff like they're disposable." "Done." "Anything else?" "Yeah. I need to know you meant it when you said I wasn't alone." "I meant every word." Reeves extended her hand. "Welcome to the leadership team, Carter." Emily shook it, feeling the weight of commitment settle onto her shoulders. It felt good. Heavy, but good. 3 weeks later, Emily stood in front of 40 medical residents and experienced nurses, teaching her first advanced trauma course. She'd spent the previous weeks developing curriculum, consulting with military medical experts, designing simulations that replicated the chaos of real emergency situations. The first thing you need to understand, she told them, is that textbook medicine fails when everything's falling apart. You need instinct. You need to read wounds like language. You need to trust yourself even when everyone's telling you you're wrong. She walked them through scenarios, mass casualties, limited resources, making impossible choices. Taught them techniques most civilian programs never covered. Showed them what it meant to save lives when nothing was ideal and everything was urgent. David Mitchell attended every session, still recovering but mobile now, insisting on being there despite doctors' orders. During breaks, he'd tell the trainees stories about Emily in the field, the medic who'd kept 3 dying men conscious through sheer force of will, who'd improvised solutions when equipment failed, who'd never given up even when giving up would have been easier. "She's not telling you this to make you tough," Mitchell said during one session. "She's telling you because someday you'll face a moment where someone's life depends on you doing something you don't think you can do. And in that moment, you'll remember this training, you'll remember her, and you'll find a way." After class, Emily found Mrs. Hughes waiting in the hallway. They'd met twice since that first phone call, building something that resembled friendship from the ashes of shared loss. Today, the older woman held a box. Owen's personal effects, the ones they sent back after he was declared dead. "I thought you should have something." Emily opened the box carefully. Inside was Owen's combat medic badge, his dog tags, a worn notebook filled with his handwriting. And at the bottom, a letter addressed to Emily in Owen's distinctive scrawl. "He wrote that 2 weeks before the ambush," Mrs. Hughes explained. "I found it mixed in with his things. Never opened it. Felt like it was meant for you." Emily's hands shook as she opened the envelope. The letter was short, written in Owen's typical no-nonsense style. If you're reading this, something went wrong and I didn't make it back. Don't blame yourself. We both knew the risks. You taught me that the day you told me combat medicine isn't about saving everyone. It's about saving who you can and living with who you can't. I've watched you carry that weight, and I'm telling you now, put it down. You've saved more lives than anyone I know. You've earned peace. Don't let my death take that from you. Stay strong. Stay alive. And for the love of all that's holy, stop working double shifts. Owen. Emily read it 3 times, then pressed it against her chest, feeling something break open inside her. Not pain. Release. Permission to stop carrying guilt that Owen himself had tried to prevent her from taking on. "Thank you," she told Mrs. Hughes, "for everything. Thank you for bringing my son's killer to justice, for making sure the truth came out, for being the person Owen believed you were." They embraced, 2 women bound by loss but no longer defined by it. 6 months after Garrick's conviction, Emily was interviewed by a major news network about her experience. They wanted the dramatic story: combat medic, murder conspiracy, hospital shootout. She gave them something different. "People keep calling me a hero," she said to the camera. "But I'm not. I'm someone who made a choice to stop running, to stop letting fear and guilt control my life, to stand up even when standing up meant becoming visible." She paused. There are people out there right now who are hiding from trauma, from mistakes, from things they think define them. I want them to know, you're not what happened to you. You're not your worst moment. You're whoever you choose to be after that moment ends. The interview went viral. Within days, Emily was receiving messages from veterans struggling with PTSD, from survivors of violence, from people who'd spent years invisible and were trying to figure out how to be seen again. She answered what she could, connected people with resources, shared her story not as inspiration, but as proof that healing wasn't linear or perfect, but was possible. The hospital started receiving requests for her training program from other institutions. Emily expanded it, brought in other veterans with combat medical experience, created a national curriculum that bridged military and civilian trauma care. She traveled, taught, spoke at conferences, became a voice for people who'd been overlooked. But she always came back to Mercy General, to the ER where she'd been invisible for 3 years before becoming impossible to ignore, to the place where she'd finally stopped running. 1 year after the conviction, Emily stood at Owen's grave for the first time. It was a quiet cemetery in his hometown, his headstone simple and clean. She laid flowers and stood there for a long time, not praying. She'd never been good at that, but just being present. I did it, she said finally. I got them. Garrick, Weston, everyone who had a hand in what happened to you. It's over. The wind rustled through trees, birds called in the distance, life continuing, indifferent and beautiful. I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding. I'm teaching people to save lives the way you taught me, and I'm trying to be the person you always said I was, even when I didn't believe it myself. She touched the cold stone. Thank you for the letter, for giving me permission to let go. I'm working on it. Some days are harder than others, but I'm working on it. Emily turned to leave and found Martinez, Torres, and Hayes waiting by their vehicles at the cemetery entrance. They'd driven 6 hours to be here, not because she'd asked, but because that's what family did. You good? Martinez asked. Getting there, really getting there this time. They drove back together, swapping stories and insults and that particular brand of dark humor that came from people who'd seen bad things and survived them. Emily laughed, really laughed, for the first time in longer than she could remember. Back at Mercy General, Sarah greeted her at the nurse's station with a stack of charts and a grin. Dr. Reeves wants you upstairs. New trauma case, something complicated. She said, and I quote, "Get Carter, she'll know what to do." Emily took the charts and headed for the stairs, already analyzing, already planning. A year ago, those words would have terrified her. Being seen meant being vulnerable, meant being hurt. Now they just felt right. She pushed through the stairwell doors and climbed toward the crisis waiting above, toward the patient who needed her, toward the life she'd built from the ashes of the one she'd left behind. Some people would call it redemption. Emily called it Tuesday, because that was the secret they never told you. Healing wasn't a moment. It wasn't a single decision or a dramatic confrontation or justice finally served. It was showing up every day and choosing to keep going. It was carrying your scars but refusing to let them define you. It was being seen and deciding that visibility was strength, not weakness. Emily Carter had spent 8 years being invisible. Now she was impossible to miss. And she was done apologizing for it. The ER doors swung open ahead of her, chaos spilling out, alarms ringing, people shouting, the beautiful, terrible symphony of lives hanging in the balance. Emily stepped into it without hesitation, her hands already steady, her mind already clear. This was who she was. Not a ghost, not a victim, not a woman running from her past, a combat medic who'd found a new war to fight. And this time, she wasn't fighting alone.